Welcome to episode 100 of the Coast to Coast AFL podcast from Nick and Blaze. I am Blaze, your host, and in this one, we celebrate 100 official podcast episodes. Yes, we've done a bunch of half episodes here and there. Obviously, if you saw the preseason analysis series that we did earlier this year, you would know we did a bunch of half episodes in that one. So technically, we're at like 110, if I'm going to be technical. But this is the official 100th episode of the podcast. And what a week to actually have our 100th episode. Incredible games across the board, some close ones, some not so close ones. Mostly the one between Richmond and Port Adelaide. We'll get to that. But we're going to jump straight into it. How are you doing, Mr. Syric?
Not too bad. Well, I say not too bad. Those that know me personally know that I had a bit of stress to deal with. But I think I've managed that. And yeah, just had a nice little Easter, years-long weekend to relax a bit after a tiny bit of a headache. Watch a bit of football, which was nice. And then yeah, as I said, went to my celebrate Easter at my aunt's house, which is always nice. They live near the coast. Wasn't a warm day to be near the beach, but at the same time, it's a lovely house. And yeah, it's just very nice to spend some time with them. So, as I said, bit of family, bit of friends, bit of football, and, yeah, good time to be thankful. And, as I said, obviously very thankful to have made, well, making, I guess, the 100th episode with you, Blazy, because, yeah, as I said, for something that was just like, on a whim, let's just do it. It's not been too structured. I like to think that we make improvements on the podcast each year, and yeah, we hope anyone who's out there appreciates what we've done through these 100 episodes. As to whether it's just listening to your team, whether it's just making a few comments here and there, whatever, just enjoying football. We like to talk about football, and we hope that yeah, you've enjoyed 100 episodes.
Yeah, we're very grateful that you've all managed to just support us on this little fun little journey that we've been on. Even if it's just one view or 100 views, as that one Essendon episode somehow got, we're very grateful. And we just love the footy, and we're very grateful to have a platform where we can just kind of talk about it more. In terms of my week itself, my Easter weekend was very good. I worked Good Friday, Easter Saturday, and Easter Sunday, so I raked in a lot of big bucks at work because of the public holiday rates. I didn't work Easter Monday. I went over to my parents' house and actually celebrated Easter then. We watched the Easter Monday game. What a game that was. We will get to that later in the episode. And I caught up with my best friend as well yesterday. Yesterday being Monday, as recording this, of course. And I got to show her the little kind of thing that I'm working on that I can't tell you guys about just yet. Sarek knows. It's very cool. You'll probably pick up what's going on if you haven't seen my Instagram in a couple of weeks, I would say. But until then, I have to keep it a little hush. But yeah, no, I'm very, very excited to get into this week because there have been some fantastic games across the board, even from some games that we weren't exactly expecting would be like good watches. But unfortunately, our first game is one of those not good watches because it was kind of a bit of a decimation by the Brisbane Lions.
Mm. No, you're absolutely right. It was a game that normally these two teams have been mostly close together. But yeah, it was just a very disappointing outlook from the Magpies from the outset. You know what? I'm going to do the scores. So we were at the Gabba, and yeah, from the outset, Brisbane just, yeah, had a bit of dominance, started in the midfield, and they ended up with 17-17, 119. And Collingwood, while they are accurate, just aren't scoring enough with 10-5, 65.
Yeah, 54-point margin. The conditions were fairly dry. It was fairly like decent game in terms of atmosphere, but the actual output of both teams were very different.
Yeah, and it's one of those ones where, as I said, I was a bit unfortunate. Like, I would have maybe considered changing my tip when after I heard Nick Dacos was out. Yeah, as I said, as much as like I hate to be one of those like media people that are like, oh, Nick Dacos is like 95% of Collingwood. I think it was very obvious how much that midfield just didn't cope without that one major bowl winner in the middle, especially going up against Brisbane. It's probably the least team, the team I'd least want to lose one of your most experienced midfielders.
Yeah.
Obviously, the loss of Pendles didn't help, but he's not really a massive solo bowl winner. I don't think that affected the result as much as Dacos, but Brisbane had a pretty much clearance dominance, 42 clearances to 24, 79.5 first possession clearance rate as well, which is very healthy. And the disappointing thing is they absolutely control the outside game as well. 150 marks. All their wingers did relatively well. Revel continues to have a pretty solid season. Zorko off the half back line. Kai Lohman, 4 goals. Not so much involved in transition as much as someone like Levi. But when you hit the scoreboard, you're not going to complain too much. Link McCarthy continues to get a couple of goals. His return has been very much appreciated now that he's hitting the scoreboard a bit more. And Gideon Coleman, geez, is nearly back to the form he was back in, 2023? 2023? I think so.
Yeah, it was like early to mid 2023 when he did his first injury.
Yeah, I was talking about the form where they went to the grand final and lost, and he was almost best on ground.
Then yes, it would have been 2023. Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so again, very fantastic, but it was like, I know Collingwood on paper doesn't have the most ruthless team, if fair to say, but yeah, this was just a bit insipid. DeGoey, Chris, Sidebottom, Lipinski all had very down games, which was like most of the midfield unit. Ned Long was okay, at least from what I saw, just surface level watching the game. And Ashcroft, really started to dominate. So Draper influenced a few contests. Still, that Draper level of inconsistency. Sometimes he will do something dumb.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he does have a feeling of warming up.
I do want to give some credit to Oscar Allen. I think he actually had a fairly solid game this week, compared to like the start of this season, where he was a little hit and miss in like the 1 or 2 games that he'd played, because I think he was still coming back from a minor injury, in the opening round. But from the games that we have seen him in, this one is definitely his best as a Lion so far.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And again, it just really helps when you can sort of support your other forwards. Obviously, Ty Gallo's playing in defense now because of the injuries, but Logan Morris, he's still having a great game. 3 goals, 3. Could have hit the scoreboard a tiny bit more, but when you have Oscar Allen supporting you there, like, it just takes a lot of pressure off. And as I said, it just makes, again, this potent forward line more so. And I think, Brisbane looked a bit slow at the start of the year, but I think we're getting to a point where the ring rust might have officially shaken. And we've got to consider the Lions one of the top threats of the competition, despite their not perfect record.
Yeah, I think it's kind of always been their case. Like, even when they have like fairly down games, they always manage to come back and show why they are the reigning premiers. They did it plenty of times last year, and they're just currently doing it again. Like, they slowly get themselves back into gear. They're getting their injuries back and their suspensions back, and they'll pretty much be back to like near like full threat as to what they were when they started.
Yeah, again, Harris Andrews are coming back next week. So again, it was a 1-1? No, it would be 2-1 while he was out. Brisbane will take that.
Yes, that's right.
And as I said, there's not too much. Like, Ryan Lester, again, proved at least, that no matter what, they'll always have like someone that can play that key back role. he was sort of floating along a few players, but he definitely felt a bit more solid. Like we've said, like how his last 2 years have probably been the best of his career, despite being a player that's come close to a delisting, or being fully out of the competition, and yeah, it's turned into someone reliable. So yeah, again, it's a credit to Brisbane's coaching staff, but the Magpies probably aren't quite it once you take away their experience. We've talked about how they're trying to blood in some younger players. I still think they managed to be older than the Lions. Yeah, still older by a couple of years despite the loss of Pendlebury. I guess Dacos is technically lowering their average age or hiring. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's like 20, 22, something like that.
Would be, yeah. He feels like a veteran though. But,
yeah, just the way that he plays makes him feel experienced.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, Collingwood has said they're gonna have to just do a bit of that this year. I don't think they've been too bad. This is probably their worst game. But at the same time, again, they're gonna have to work some of their younger players who I don't think were too bad. In fact, if you look at the people that didn't perform too well, like again, you got the midfielders. Still Cyborg was very, very quiet without people distributing him the ball. And a few others. But yeah, as I said, they'll just have to adjust their system a bit more. I think they all sort of expected that from Collingwood.
Mm-hmm.
Probably a lot of people thought it would happen last year, but I think this year is where you're just starting to see like not a bad Collingwood, but definitely a transitioning Collingwood. And yeah, so that forward line's just always going to be a bit of a bane for them this year.
Yeah, I completely agree. No incidents on the MRO front. Only injury was the Nick Dacos calf, which forced the late change from them. No idea if he's going to play in gather round. We will await further news on that. But otherwise, fairly clean game. All other things considered.
Yeah, well, clean by Brisbane.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I have written in my notes is that
on the injury front and stuff like that as well.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah. Sorry, I thought you were talking about like match stand, but yeah, no, it's I have written there like because Collingwood were a very good outside team last year, but when you look at their numbers, they've actually dropped off a lot. The St Kilda game was the only one this year where they've managed to had a solid outside games, and by that I mean like marking, movement from the halfback, a lot of the D50 to forward line scores have dropped off for Collingwood, so. Yeah, I say like, and because we talked about individual players, some going up, some going down. It's what it is. But I think that's like the major structural concern for Collingwood. They play a slow brand of football, and that's all well and good. But when you're not scoring from the halfback line, it just opens you up to, either not scoring enough because you're spending all the time setting up for play that doesn't happen, or the more you use the ball, the more you're just likely to turn it over. I mean, that's just statistics.
Yeah, that's exactly
no matter how good you are at ball use, every kick has some element of danger to it.
No, that's exactly right. Exactly right. All right, let's jump over now to the traditional Good Friday APL clash hosted by North Melbourne. I believe North Melbourne and Carlton rotate this every year, but this year was North Melbourne hosting it at Marvel Stadium, and with a 10-point margin, the Roos won out. One of the first of quite a few surprising tips I got correct this week, let's just say, with a 14-12-96 to 13-8 86.
Yeah, and it's just so hard because like it technically, like the way the first half went, like it wasn't a Carlton game, like it was just an arm wrestle. There were parts of Carlton games that were pretty standard, the stoppage dominance obviously being a big one. They didn't quite have pure dominance. North's midfield is very solid, even without Tristan Sherry. As I said, they really ramped it up in that third quarter, got to that, 22-point lead, and in the most Carlton way, they absolutely bottled it in the last. Like, there was so much credit I was like internally giving them in that third quarter. I'm like, okay, like it's really nice to see them come out from halftime, try and make a statement and prove that they're not just a team of pushovers or,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, however the media is presenting this. I think there's a bit more structurally to it, but like, let's face it. You got a team that doesn't finish out games. You got to have some sort of, question on their confidence and abilities. But yeah, as I said, it was just like, oh, it's good to see. But as I said, credit to North. If they've done their homework, and again, it's sort of how they play anyway. Like that's essentially how you beat Carlton. If you just take control enough near the end of the game, you can just sort of get easier marks that turn into transition football. And once you take away the stoppages for Carlton, there's really nothing left to them. Even in this game, like despite how good they were for bits, scores from turnover, it was just 3-2-20. Scores from stoppage was a lot more impressive. And, the Roos aren't exactly the cleanest football team ever. Like normally they're getting about 40 points from turnover scored against them per match. So, as I said, it's just Carlton's inability, to find other avenues to score that really hurts them. Meanwhile, North, as I said, sometimes their outside movement doesn't equate too much, but when they can get it inside their forward 50, they are a different beast. Like I said, even though I don't personally believe in like North's grown that much, I think it only takes a small changes to their inside 50 count to turn into a much higher scoring. Because as I said, I'm not going to say like they've fixed all their problems in the front half of the ground, but their forward line setup is much better
It is.
than it was like a couple of years ago.
It is. They've very much tightened up the way that they structure in their forward 50, and it's made such an improvement upon their not just their inside 50 count, but what they do with those inside 50s. Because you look at, and I'm just going to use a game coming up as you said, but you look at Richmond's game against Port Adelaide. We had so many more inside 50s than Port Adelaide did, but very, very little, like about 10% of them were actual like score conversions. Not actually, maybe not even 10%. Like it was that day night of a difference as to how poor our forward line is at the moment, and how two, like how much Alira did a lot in that defense.
Yeah, well, as I said,
But
we'll
whereas
talk about that
you
one.
look at North's forward structure right now, they are honestly, I think they are leagues ahead of Richmond's, and that's in terms of
100%.
everything everywhere else around the ground. Maybe it's a little bit closer, but just in terms of their forward structure and how their tall forwards lead, how their smalls actually operate as crummers as well. Like they're so much better structured, and that's what's making the big difference with North right now.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where even in this game, like I think that Paul Curtis was very ordinary until the last quarter.
He didn't do too much until the fourth.
Yeah, but like other players are sort of stepping up. Dylan Stevens, like he's been a bit of a redeemer this year. Like he had a very solid game on the outside. I think there's been only one game this year where it's been quiet. I think that was against maybe the Eagles. But apart from that, he's been fantastic. Of course, we've got to talk about some of the efforts of the inside as well. Like LDU, Wardlaw, and Trembath. Geez, those last two quarters, there was some like, okay, like probably not the best quarters in like Roo history, but like in terms of match-winning efforts, especially those smothers by Wardlaw and LDU just being involved in it. It seemed almost every scoring chain. It was pretty fantastic to watch. As I said, we've criticised some of their midfield leaders for not getting involved in scoring and just sort of racking up possessions that mean nothing. But this was like a Roo side with intent in that last quarter.
Yeah, after how rough of a 2025 Wardlaw had and part of a rough 2024, it's so good to see him finally be back in form, because he is when he's on, he is. I won't say one of the best defenders in the competition, but he's one of the best not defenders, one of the best younger midfielders.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
If you put him into best midfielders as an age bracket, he's up there easily. Like he is so good.
I think we just gotta like put him with like Hayden Young, where it's like everyone knows that like if he had a clear uninjury interrupted run at it, he would be better.
Yeah, him and
Unfortunately,
Young
the
would
way he
be,
plays,
so good.
yeah, sort of puts him prone to injuries. He he had no care for his body.
He is a very reckless player sometimes.
Exactly. But as I said, we all hope he gets his body right because it's very important for that defensive structure for North. Again, we've like commented about how maybe they can't rely on Wardlaw exactly, but as I said, like once you see some of the efforts of some of their players coming around them, Finn O'Sullivan continues to evolve. And you know what I mean? There's like I just having a look at it. There's another one too. I guess I was thinking of Trembath. Dersma, of course. Dersma.
Yes.
Definitely more on offense, but just adds an extra bit of forward line link up threat. Some of his ball use has improved from what I normally attribute to Zane Dersma. So, as all it takes is that growth around them. And as I said, like we're just looking at 8 to 9 wins for the year, and they're at least on track for that. Like, as much as I'm skeptical about North, I think once they face them, I think they'll get on a bad run. And I think they do have like a run of tougher opposition.
Yeah, they will definitely hit a wall at some point. But right now, they're looking good.
Good's a bit hard. They have a ladder position and record that they can
be proud of,
be fine with.
Yeah,
they lost to the Eagles. But they had more opportunities to throw a few games away, and they did. So you got to give them kudos there. But yeah, as I said, Carlton, however, it's rough. Again, like just such a mixed bag from their senior players, choking. And, as I said, it's, talking about last week, as I said, it's just like most of their scores come from good stoppage work. Pittman had a field day.
Mm-hmm.
But again, you're looking at a North side without Cherry, and it's like, they dominated in the clearances early, but like, that was targetable. Like, not every game's going to be that. And, it's not like Carlton's record has been, schedule has been overly difficult, and they haven't even really looked like being in winning positions near the end of the game. So, big concerns for them.
It is a little concerning.
One positive, I thought Dirksen played all right. Pretty tough ask, considering their defense had fallen apart. Need of Jacob Wiedering's head sort of put him in a tough position, and he tried to hold up well. Obviously being by Trembath, and obviously wouldn't call it defensive effort to he has stuff to work on, but like I said, I liked his efforts, and he was put in a tough position. So I'll give him a little shout out.
Yeah, but with Wiedering out for Gather Round, it's not looking very hopeful for the next week at the very least.
Actually, that's a good point. I was going to ask you about it because we did talk about it a bit last week. Again, another concussion from a knee going to the back of the head. You said, sort of let it be. It just happens so infrequently.
At the time,
maybe
at the time, because it was a one-off incident, I think it was okay to just consider it an AFL act and just let it kind of sit. But now that it's happened again, it might have to be something the AFL might actually take a look at.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things where I think there needs to be some sort of punishment, at least at some level, because again, I do think that once you put like suspension on the line, like players are good at adapting their technique, and we know a lot of leapers that are really good. I think Liam Ryan, for how often he takes a specky, he is almost always clean with it. I say almost because like undoubtedly you can see where he's probably need someone accidentally.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But more often than not, he is. Well, it's not even knee. It's sort of like the what is it? The fibia, the front one. I can't remember.
Fibia.
But like that more
like
even part of the leg.
Yeah.
It's not digging in, and it gets that spring action. So again, maybe it's an AFL initiative just to be like talking about marking technique as well, and like maybe that's like next year they bring out a video package saying, hey, this is how we want you to approach marking contest, and any mark that leads with a pointy end of the knee might get, that gets high contact might get suspended. I do think that you probably need multiple instances before it's worthy of a suspension, but
Yeah.
maybe it's like a fine into suspension situation.
Yeah, I think having it on a scaling system, I think, is a better way to go about it.
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
outside of that, yes, as mentioned, Jacob Wedding will miss out on gather round. He will not get to go to Adelaide due to concussion. And on the MRO side of things, Will Hayward has been suspended for one match for striking George Wardlaw, but they are challenging it at the tribunal. I believe that's tonight as we're recording this. I think it's on a Tuesday. So that will be very interesting to see the outcome of that.
I think it's pretty straightforward, but like it's an interesting one because if Will Hayward gets off, I forgot who it was, but there's someone later on. Oh, right, in our game. There's someone who might be thinking about getting off if
No, I think that one's a firm suspension. Yeah, I think that one's already accepted.
Oh, you would think so, but like I don't know. I mean, they're both gut punches, but yeah, Will Hayward, I would be very surprised if he got off. And yeah, as I said, as much as I hyped him up early in the season, he hasn't quite delivered, and that was a very disappointing match by Hayward. Didn't have much influence, a few turnovers, and then just like gave away. Yeah, just a dumb, punch. As I said, for a player like him, he's important for Carlton's transition, I guess, into stability, I guess. They still have some few older veterans. They want to ease into whatever it is, like a rebuild or whatever they're doing. But yeah, as I said, that doesn't help. But yeah, bit of a down day for him. But yeah, it was a pretty down day for Carlton in general.
It was indeed.
Gave Robert text, a mate. Oh, did I? No, that was last week. I probably don't be.
Yeah, maybe let him be for this week.
Yeah. Well, he comes from a good Italian family, so they probably doing some mourning on Easter, and I think Carlton he might have put Carlton's woes in that basket, so to speak.
I think that's a fair chance of that. All right, let's jump over now to a Friday night clash over at the Adelaide Oval, where the Crows hosted the Dockers, and with a 2-point margin, another risky tip for me pays off as Fremantle win out 11-12 78 to 11-10 76.
I wouldn't exactly say it was a risky tip, but geez, you did nice on the 50-50s this week.
I really did.
Came on the nice side of both of them. It was a tale of two halves, though. Freo scored 8 in the first half to 3 for Adelaide, whilst Adelaide scored 4 in the first half and then 7 in the last. It was weird. It was almost like a Carlton game by Freo. They dominated the contest early. They did hold possession a lot more than Carlton does, but still relied on that stoppage advantage. They didn't overly score for them, but they were sort of just like keeping territory and waiting for Adelaide turnover, which Adelaide in the back half have not been clean. We're going to talk about that a bit more. But for this game, it just let Freo get a comfortable lead. It was a very high pressure game. No team really had it easy. But eventually Adelaide turned that pressure into locking their possession in their forward half. And that's what sort of started this fight back. Defensive efforts, however, sealed this game. There were some of the most beautiful defensive efforts. 2 smothers were key moments in this game.
Yes, absolutely.
One of them being the Sean Darcy smother on a Riley Bryano kick in the inside 50 when Adelaide had, I think, a 6-point lead with about 3 minutes, I think, to go. Another score would have made it really hard for Fremantle to draw or win. But he was able to get the turnover, which led to the Freo scoring and the score being tied up. And obviously the Alex Pearce smother at the end. Obviously Adelaide were a bit unlucky. I thought that ball lace kick was going in. It would have been really nice for his first goal to potentially be a match winner, or at least I think it was potentially going to be his first goal. I don't really attribute ball lace to being a goal kicker.
I can't remember if he's kicked a goal. I think he has, but I could be very much wrong.
It's not the player that's like, he's not that, like, look, he is a, what do you call it? A depth defender.
Yeah.
So, it wouldn't surprise me if he swung forward just, as a gamble and kicked a goal. But, as I said, you don't normally associate that with him. I thought it was going in. I think it took a very unlucky bounce. But Freo made sure that luck turned into a victory. And Adelaide just have nothing going for them. Like, there was maybe one controversial-ish umpiring decision. I can't say you would blame the umpires for this game, though. But it was just them falling on the wrong side of the coin. They played fantastic football and only had one win to show for it. I'm not saying there's alarm bells, and I think, what we'll talk about, why there's still some overall issues for them, but geez, you wouldn't want to be the first team to be like an easier opponent for them, because I think they're going to try and make up some percentage or take out some frustration on whichever team goes into their path.
It is really unfortunate.
I think it's Carlton
for the Crows.
this week.
They have Carlton Thursday night. It's really unfortunate for the Crows, because they have been playing some fantastic football and haven't been able to like finish out games. That's not to say that like they run out of legs or anything like that. They just struggle to get like enough score to win, essentially. Which sounds kind of stupid to say when that's the whole basis of the game. But there's so many more fundamentals to it that it doesn't make it. That's not so simple. And when they come up against this early tough schedule, like against Freo, against the team they were playing last week, I've completely forgotten. And they're all just
Geelong.
Oh yeah, Geelong. Thank you. And it's all just extremely close games. It's if it was a draw, it'd look a little bit better because the teams are so even for the most part. But because they're just losing by the slimmest of margins, it's harder to contextualize how good the Crows actually are.
Yeah, because I will, the issue I guess I'm referring to. And let's also face it, like they've had a mountain of injuries as well.
Yes, they have.
Like, they've lost Dawson a fair parts of the season, Archie. They've obviously going to get Keane back at the very end of the season, so on and so forth. But I think what it is like we saw them play. They're one of the few teams that I think were, described as playing from the back half. That as well as like Collingwood and Hawthorn last year.
Mm-hmm.
But they've just struggled in the early parts of the games. They've just struggled with movement in general. But, when the game gets a bit later, some space frees up, they look so potent. And when they get it in there, they're just scoring with ease. And you can almost see why they persist with it. Because when it works, it still comes up. And even in the earlier part, they still generally score fairly accurately. I know they were 4-5. But, as I said, they had a few, I guess unexpected misses. But yeah, as I said, it's just like they have a pretty good rate of inside 50 to scoring. They just have terrible movement. Like the D50 to score is almost Carlton levels, which is very concerning. This match, it was a 2.5% for them to move their ball from D50 to score, despite an okay 12% movement from D50 to forward 50. Which suggests, you know what I mean? It's like they can move the ball to their forward half, but they're just losing it in that last entry. Alex Neil-Bullen has been pretty decent, but I think he's sort of been a bit up and down in terms of being a pure distributor, at least this year. He does get involved in moments, though.
Mm-hmm.
We know Keezer is definitely more of a deep player. So it's just, finding that player that will bring him inside 50 with conviction. But at the same time, as I said, Freo is also pretty good defensively, especially from that back half. So you've got to give a bit of credit to Fremantle as well. And, as I said, they played a very solid game. It is all their big stars. Murphy Reid had probably a better game than he had for the start of the season.
Mm-hmm.
He's been a bit up and down, had an absolute blinder though. And as I said, most of the probably halfback is a bit of an issue for Freo though. Some of their rebounds been a bit mediocre. They haven't really found any outside marking wing contests. I think that's also why they struggled later in the game as well, because so they find it hard to mitigate as well opposition marking on the wings. Like, as I said, whoever they have playing on the wings, whether it's Sherry, who's, finding his feet. What's the other one? O'Driscoll obviously not playing, but he's not really a defensive player, so to speak. And then Jack McPhee, Corey Wagner, and they drift up there, haven't been having as much impact. So that's what I would say for that. But apart from that, Fremantle are going very well. As I said, not perfectly, a bit iffy in between games, but again, a relatively tough schedule, and they've only lost at Geelong at home. I can't really complain. There's still again, I don't think they're like the most dominant tier team going around, but they definitely look like a possibly could get top 4 candidate.
They're very composed in terms of just like how they play the game. Like, they're not a team that makes very obvious mistakes. They're not a team that necessarily has pieces out, like players out of position very often.
Yeah.
Like, they're very well structured, they're very well built, and it feels like they're not really missing any major pieces, even though their backline probably could use a little bit of a tune-up, just in terms of how it kind of operates in terms of like the way that they move off half-back. But otherwise, like, they're really good. Like, and when you look at their forward line, it's mostly just Tracy and Ross doing like a lot of the normal score conversion stuff. But when Amos is on, like, he actually still looks very solid as well. Like,
Amos is probably...
He had a pretty solid...
he had a fantastic game. Yeah. No, this week he scored 4 goals. But I'll say Amos has actually probably overtaken Tracy this year. Not Tracy. Voss. Yeah, as I said, I think the concerning thing about Amos is that, again, when he's out of the game, he doesn't quite have off-the-ball efforts. Like, Voss will always bring something to a game, even if his goal kicking's off, which is unfortunate that it's happened this year. Obviously, he had those woes at Essendon that prevented him from staying in the team. But yeah, as I said, you feed him opportunities and he tends to do something. So, their toll production, as well as obviously having a Dutters having a very good start to the year. Murphy Reed getting involved. Switkowski sort of getting involved. This game he didn't have much possession, but his ball use tend to go into score involvements, which is what you want to see from him. So, yeah, as I said, most things are spinning from the Fremantle. Like, the biggest issue is like Jago O'Meara not probably having as much impact. Some of their outside movement. What to do with Sean Darcy, who again, I thought had an okay game. They're definitely playing them to make their opposition ruck more honest.
I don't think...
Because it can.
I don't think you necessarily need to have Sean Darcy to have a huge impact of a game, especially when you have Luke Jackson doing like so much of the heavy lifting already. Like, I feel like Sean Darcy is a good piece to have. One, just to keep the opposing ruck honest if they have only one ruck. And two, just as an extra hand. Like, if you need to fill a hole in defense or fill a random hole up forward every now and then. Whereas Luke Jackson can just do what he does with no other issues.
And, Adelaide are almost doing the same with McAndrew and Riley O'Brien. Just as I ruled him out, then I sort of realised, it's like, oh, yeah, you probably do want to play senior ruckman when you've got, Sean Darcy to contend with. I wish they did. And honestly, apart from that kick into the fist of Sean Darcy that caused the turnover to get a goal against, Riley O'Brien did okay as, pure tap. He doesn't do enough around the ground, but, that's sort of why he's fading out the competition. But you got to give huge credit to Lachlan McAndrews. 13 tackles, still 31 hit-outs, and a fair few to advantage. He had a statement game, for an up-and-coming ruckman that's, still basically a baby in ruckman years. Against the hardest combination you can go up against. Still took the majority of taps, still took a high percentage of centre bounces, and stood tall. There's occasionally where he let Jackson's athleticism get too much space, that's something he'll work on. But like in terms of competition, contest, and not getting taken out of it, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah,
Huge
absolutely.
credit got to be given to him.
Absolutely. I think Adelaide have a really, really, really bright star on their hands, at least in terms of a ruck position. Over on the injury side of things, Luke Pedler will be out with a jaw injury. From my understanding, he did have to go under the knife for it. I think I was reading something on that earlier. The timeline on that is only usually a couple of weeks for recovery, thankfully. So it's not too bad. And then on the MRO side of things, Jordan Dawson and Luke Jackson will both find $1,000 each for contact with an umpire.
Yeah, I guess, again, we're talking about like, Adelaide's outside, transition wise, but, like to give it some context, like they have lost a lot of outside movers.
They have.
Archie,
Now Pedler.
I think
Peeling
Pedler,
hasn't lifted a little bit.
Curtin.
Dan Curtin there
Well,
is out
Peeling's
as well.
been still playing mid.
Yeah, Peeling's still in, but his output currently isn't as high as it was like last year, which is.
Not this game, but I agree, Jen.
Let him down a little bit.
Saligo is sort of the one that sort of started going on the outside to make up for it. But so they have a lot of decent players, and I don't think this is like, again, this is why I'm not too concerned about their outside games slightly coming short. Because I think by the back half of the year, they should get most of their players back, and I think they'll become maybe not as threatening as last year, but like still be in a position to win more of these games. It just feels like it's just that little piece that's preventing them from being that high-scoring back half slingshot threat that they were last year.
Yeah, it takes a lot of their power out of just how they move on the outside. Which is really, really unfortunate for them, especially going into a slightly take out Carlton, but a slightly tough run in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Can we move on
to our game?
Yes,
a game that not much really happened. Let's be honest.
Not much happened.
Richmond hosting Port Adelaide. Yeah, true. Richmond hosting Port Adelaide at the MCG. I thankfully got to go to this game, my first game of the season. And despite the loss, I actually was pretty happy with the way we played most of the game. So with a 42-point margin, Port Adelaide did win out 13-12, 19-2, 6-12, 48. And apart from Alir having 18 intercept possessions, 16 of them intercept marks, and Vlossen having none, it was kind of a game that we expected otherwise.
Wait, no way.
Yeah.
No, it was 8 intercept marks, 18 intercepts.
Oh, okay.
18 intercept marks would have been a record by, I think it would have been 7. I think 11's the most.
Either way, Alir destroyed.
It was impressive.
Destroyed us.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Getting 10 coaches votes and no surprise. Unfortunately, I think this is where, a bit of it is like on schematics. I don't think Richmond are that far away from being a competent football team. But man, they've got score. Like their forward line just isn't usable at the moment.
Okay.
It's just damaged beyond repair.
Although
it's unfortunate, it's not technically their fault.
Although this week we did have a bright spot in Liam Fawcett, which is I find really funny.
Yeah, it was good.
Purely for the fact that this was his second. I did mention this in the Discord. This is his second game ever. You and I were at his first game ever last year at the Adelaide Oval against Port Adelaide, and then his second game is also against Port Adelaide, and I was at this one, and they were both losses.
He had a bit more opportunity.
Yes, he actually.
I think that was the biggest.
He looked like a competent tall forward, which is nice.
And the good thing is like when Richmond had a swing of possession, he was working real hard to make sure that resulted in something. Obviously, we know that.
The way that I noticed that he was able to have more impact is we were luring Alir further up the ground, and that gave Fawcett more space further up forward.
I think Alir, I think it was technically on Lafau. Alir just sort of
probably, rotates. But Alir would have just floated because he was having that good of a game.
Yeah, exactly. But as I said, it was one of those things where when Richmond were kicking through congestion, it was just Ilya. But like as you said, Fawcett was like, okay, I'm going to be the one that isn't afraid to leave wide. It results in tougher shots. He kicked a couple out in the full,
Yes, he did.
but he still kicked two straight. So overall, you're still taking that. I think Steele Green as well. Like he put like a bit more ground level accountability, and although his disposal, kicking for goal was absolutely dreadful.
Oh yeah, the
Unfortunately,
fact that he got like 4 tries in the span of like 3 minutes and missed most of them was like kind of was really
yeah, I
funny.
think it was two behinds, one out of bounds, one short, wasn't it?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, look, he had a pretty fantastic. Like he's actually improved a bit. It's just unfortunate that hasn't quite hit the scoreboard, except for that one game where he kicked three, wasn't it?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, in terms of the flow of this game, though, you're right. Like Port didn't really. Well, their contest, it wasn't that great. Like Richmond were doing solid in the clearances in the first half. I would say it was really poor for Port. It was just that Richmond had a few too many turnovers. Port were getting score from them. And obviously, like a 1-6 to 0-1 first quarter. Like that was probably one of the worst quarters of football to watch.
Yeah,
Like
was
it
not a
was,
pretty quarter.
yeah, it was rough. Yeah, as I said, I would say the second quarter was almost entertaining. Richmond started to fight back, started to win a few more contests, and although technically they sort of kept with it in the third, it was just again Richmond, their ways of inside 50s weren't converting to enough. I get the actual inside 50 stat for you. Their efficiency inside 50 for score was actually pretty high. It was 50%, but goal I think is 12. The AFL doesn't have that stat. Unfortunately, that's in another thing. But yeah, as I said, it was pretty low. But you expect that.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
kind
as I
of
said,
expecting it. Like when you have 50 inside 50s to 46, but only like 18 conversions,
yeah.
it's not the greatest of math.
No, exactly. But as I said, Richmond decent enough at stoppages. Probably could have taken a few more turnovers to the goal square, but not to be. And yeah, Port. I don't think it was interesting because both these teams were almost as young as each other. 25 age and 24.8. Experience only 4 games average difference. But yeah, as I said, I think that's just where Port is, where they're not clean, but they do have a nice enough core of bowl users to, oh, maybe not bowl users, but like core to like still more often than not beat teams or be competitive against teams around them. I don't think this is going to be like plummeting for Port. Maybe optimistically there might be like an up and down team like St Kilda. But yeah, as I said, 2-2, and their records like you know, the teams that have played aren't that great. As I said,
Yeah.
and the bowl use has been pretty mediocre. Yeah, as I said, it's just yeah. I mean, you'll take 2 wins, I guess. Some of the kids doing well is all right, I guess. Josh Lay has been pretty impressive. I like some of his attend. Whitlock seems to be like this might be the year where he just cements his place in the team.
Whitlock and Lukosius both looked really good this week.
Yeah, it was funny. Lukosius spent a bit of time back just to like fill in a few holes, and it was like one of those things where he seemed a bit quiet, but then when he got positions, they normally did something, which is what Port lacks. So he's a good field kick. It's just some of his efforts. He's one of those players that always looks a bit lackadaisical, and it's hard to tell whether he's putting intent on or not because he's not a high tackler. He's not high, in your face pressure. But it's the sort of player that you can sort of rely on the outside to get the job done. Still 6 score involvements, 2 goals, 1. Pretty solid. Yeah, the only other thing I would like to say about this game is that Wheelo, the place where I got a lot of my stats from, they have like a column for bowl use. And for the last 2 weeks, basically, I'm not sure exactly how it works. I assume it's like if you produce ball use that, gets neutral, or to a scoring chain, you get positive. If you turn the ball over or that turnover goes to a score against you, you get negative. But the sum of Richmond's ball use for the last 2 weeks have been in the negative. And like your average is meant to be, or like the average for a team in a given week is about 50 for ball use. So I think that just sort of explains where Richmond is at. Obviously, goal shooting will give you negative ball use, which is, part of the reason why a lot of their forwards are down. It's just a shame that, as I said, a lot of the midfield players, they're trying hard, but they're not always that clean. I think Taranto was okay. I think there was another mid that was pretty good. Lawler, that's right. He had a pretty good game.
Lawler had a great game. Grill had a good game. The first time actually getting to see Sam Grill in person, he's phenomenal. What a great signing by us, honestly. I cannot wait for when Houghton's back from injury and just to see those two running around in the midfield plus Lawler. I think we've got some good kids on our hands. Plus, Ben Miller has had some fantastic improvement in our defense, which I'm very good to see. I did actually get to see some of our VFL game against St Kilda and Gibcus. It looked really good. I think he's just trying to find a little bit more confidence because I think he lost a little bit with because
there's a few times
the coaching staff, and our coaching staff I think are still a little hesitant because of his dual ACLs. So it's just trying to build his confidence back up, and then getting him back in there will be really good for us too.
Approaching contests more consistently and all that sort of stuff. But no, I agree. Like, it's hard because obviously Richmond have a lot of score against. It's hard to defend a lot, but I still think that core, like I said, their forward core, it's concerning. There's a lot of reasons why that's the case. I think the best outcome is for Lafau to find a bit of form once he's played half a season, and then you're like starting to sweat a bit less. Otherwise, it's a bit dismal. Fawcett is again another player that you're probably hoping as well. But as I said, everything else, they've got positive. It's just, as I said, I think there's still like a bit of accountability this year that you sort of forgive them the last couple of years. But as I said, I think that they need to clean up a bit of their ball use from some of their senior players because, again, you don't want, and I think this sort of happened against Carlton, you don't want to be in winning positions, especially when you're a team like Richmond, not always in that, and just to, just give the game away through bad conversion or ball use.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like, there's gonna be a lot more moments where like our forward line is just gonna struggle against some of the better defenders, and that's where we kind of need our midfield to step up a bit more. Kind of how Sydney does it. Well, not so much anymore. Sydney's forward line has actually started to look decent. But like last year with Isaac Heaney being their leading goal scorer, we kind of just need. Whether it's a Taranto,
just get Isaac Heaney.
Whether it's a Hopper,
solves a lot of problems.
Whether it's a Jaden Short coming through half back, whether it's a Sam Lawler, whoever. Maybe we just need more of our midfielders to start taking more ownership of score conversion over trying to,
or at least finding opportunities. Again, whether that's just presenting a lot of higher leads as well. But as I said, unfortunately, they've just got a lot of forwards that just take up space, but they don't have much available.
Yes.
And as you're meant to say, they might even have one less technical forward.
Yes. So
there was a lot to come out of this game.
There was so on the MRO side of things, Dion Prestia, Steely Green, Mitch Georgiadis, and Jordan Sweet were all fined $1,000 each for engaging in a melee. Samson Ryan was also part of that melee and was fined $1,000, and has also been suspended for one match for striking Jordan Sweet, similar to the gut punch with Wardlaw. I don't think they're challenging this, which is probably a good thing. But that does leave us with an issue, is that we don't have a designated ruck to go up against Kieran Briggs this week for Gather Round. So is it finally time they bring in Ollie Hayes-Brown, who has been sitting in the VFL for about 2 years developing after... Keep in mind, like a Scott Pendlebury, he's got a basketball background. He formerly played for the Perth Wildcats. So, like, he actually had an actual NBA background. Or an NBA, ABL, whatever we call it.
NBL.
Which is pretty cool. But, like, is this finally time we finally bring him out as a ruck? Because the games that I have seen him play, he looks pretty decent. But again, that's only in the VFL, and there is only so much competition you can come up against in the VFL.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at him. I've never seen him before
No,
in my
he
life.
hasn't played an AFL game yet, so there's
No, and I honestly didn't recall him ever playing for the Wildcats. Whether he did take court or not, I can't remember. But yeah, as I said, he does look like he's got a bit of meat to him. Like I don't think it's a case where he's been put there because he hasn't been played because it's not enough muscle. It just might be a different tank sort of thing. Obviously, basketball is a pure burst speed game. It would take a couple of years of dedicated football to build up the aerobic capacity,
I would
especially
assume
as a
so.
big man for football. But as you say, it's like, well, maybe you give him a chance where, again, you just put him with someone else and say, okay, you've got about 50 minutes, 50% of game time. Show us what you can do.
And
And then we'll support you with whoever.
and like in saying
I don't
that,
know.
Kieran Briggs isn't exactly in great form this season. Granted,
Oh, no.
Giants are also coming off of a bye this week.
Mm.
So that could also make a difference but I also don't entirely know who they get back from injury either, considering their midfield is currently kind of shot.
Yeah, I would
We'll
have
talk
to
about that a bit later on.
wait for the injury
Yeah.
report. Might be out now, actually.
No, I
I'll
don't
have
think
to
it's
check that.
updated because there was a Monday game. I
Okay.
don't think it's updated till like later tonight.
Yeah, that's fair.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, like it's definitely something that I hope the coaching staff are considering. I don't really want to go out like we did not like the game just gone, but the week before where we didn't have a ruck at all and got absolutely demolished. But that's just
Yeah, it was
how
like
it is.
what? Was it against Grundy or something?
I can't remember
No,
who
it
it was
can't be in
against,
Sydney.
but it was
Yeah.
not a good game.
Fremantle!
Oh yeah, it was against Freo. It was against the
That's
dual rucks.
right.
That's right.
Fremantle, the two best ruckmen in the wet where
And
you
you-
need a bit of grit and grind.
And you
It
go
was
up against
rough.
them with no dedicated ruck. Like what a decision
Yeah,
that was.
exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, like that was a game. And our next game is also a game.
Yeah. Funny that
Funny
no matter
how
how badly you're doing at some aspects, you still have to play games of football.
Funny how the Saturday
whatever
games,
you've got.
Funny how the Saturday games are kind of all just a little bit garbage this week. But yes, so the West Coast Eagles hosting the Sydney Swans over at Optus for a Saturday night clash, and with a 128-point margin, surprise, surprise, the Swans win out 24-19, 163 to 4-11-35, bringing the Eagles fans back down to earth just a little bit. But let's be honest, I don't think anyone was really surprised by this at all.
I was surprised about the margin.
I wasn't, because
the
Swans did the same thing to them last year.
Oh, I meant to a degree. I think it was 100, but yeah,
I think it was a higher margin last year, actually.
Think about the one like a few years back where they won by like 180 and they scored 260 or something like that.
Possibly. Let me double check for you. But anyway, go on.
Yeah. I think last season was just like 60 or something, which is still bad, but you know what I mean. Anyway, Swans demolish Eagles at the contest. This was sad. The good signs on the weeks before, was sort of went because they just had basic lapses of efforts. The Swans out tackling the Eagles despite an extra 138 possessions. 16 extra inside 50s for 29 more scoring shots. This was a forward line that was firing as well. Grundy dominated. Amadi set the tone early before Curnow and Heaney absolutely tore into them. Jai Sarong on the wing. I finally got to watch at least a quarter before I turned the game off of him, but he did some nice stuff. I can see why they've got him there. He seems like he's actually got a bit of he's not fast, but he's solid enough as a marking target, and sometimes that's all you need on the wing. And it's not like the Eagles had anyone going with them. And yeah, as I said for the Eagles, it's just man, I know Reed was tagged, and I just use Reed as more of a symbolic for Eagles leaders and all that, but or young Eagles leaders. But when you get the tag on them, like you need to teach young players what to do, especially like a player of Reed's caliber. And I just think Reed went about it the wrong way. Like he has a lot of intent to make himself known in the contest, or you know what I mean. But when he's struggling, he tends to do that in the, giving away free kicks and like getting frustrated ways. And he doesn't actually get in position to lay defensive tackles, more externally supporting the midfield. If anything, I think he actually tries a bit harder to get the ball, which is like the detriment to the Eagles, because it just like brings more players to the contest. Eagles don't have big bodies, and all of a sudden, the Swans midfielder just outbodying them. So, you know what I mean? And this game was pretty clear because, they didn't have any midfield support. They were losing a hell of a lot of territory, and just nothing they were doing got them anywhere close to the Swans in any level.
Yeah, no, there isn't all that much we could really say about this game. Like, it was kind of just an absolute bloodbath. Swans were at their best, and the Eagles just got brought down to earth.
Yeah. As I said today, it was like hard to lose that goodwill from the last 2 weeks. And I still think you got to focus on the positives, but like, yeah, this is like edging towards this is still like borderline unexcusable. And I will just say it from the efforts that I watched in the first couple of quarters, because or quarter and a half, whatever I watched up to, I can't quite remember. Because as I said, it was just like, I think an important thing for young teams is just finding ways to keep themselves in it. And the most disappointing thing is like even the few players that did tackle, like you look at the tackle counts, like the highest tacklers were Matt Owis and Malachi Champion. Like they were desperately trying to keep the ball locked in the few chances that it got. But like the midfield weren't doing the same. Schoenberg, he was, still moving a bit forward, a few tackles. Stuff Titler, 3 tackles. And then you get Tim Kelly and Jack Graham is the only other ones with 3. So there's only a few people laying tackles. There's only a few players winning ball. The clearances were pretty poor. Tom McCarthy and was the only midfielder to get repeated clearance, really. It was pretty dire.
Yeah, there isn't too much praise we can give the Eagles. I do think that like this isn't necessarily a game to judge the Eagles harshly on. Purely for the fact
they were gonna. Yeah,
this was kind of expected that the Swans were just gonna go hard in this one and just blow the Eagles away. But like there are, if you can at least think about what you saw out of the past 2 weeks prior to this game, and the positive things out of that, you can kind of just wash this game away and move on to next week, because there's going to be games like this where the Eagles are not at the point where they can contend with these better teams, but they can contend with the teams that are more in like the mid-range and the average, somewhat.
Yeah, I want to sort of agree. Like it's hard because obviously McQuarter's only in his second year, but you know what I mean. I do think they've had
no, this is his third year. I'm pretty
nearly. And because he didn't take over, did he? Because Simo got sacked halfway through the year. I don't think it was McQuarter that took over.
No,
or maybe it was.
You had a caretaker. The Eagles had a caretaker.
Wasn't it Schofield or something? I can't remember.
Because McQuarter was the caretaker for when Dimmer left.
Yeah.
And then when he didn't get the Richmond job, I think he might have gone either to Melbourne or St Kilda for a year, or something like that, and then got the Eagles job, maybe. Because I think when Simmer left was a year after.
Yeah.
So maybe it has only been 2 years. Maybe you're right.
It's only been 2 years. I said all I'm trying to say with this is that I think after a couple of years, you do have to lay the groundworks of not getting smashed. And again, if this is the only one for the year, it's again, you go with you. Who cares? If this is the worst, well, it's probably going to be the Eagles' worst loss. Let's face it. It's hard to beat.
I mean,
but if they only get beaten by 60 to 70 points.
I'm just trying to think of which other teams are probably going to give them big losses like this. It's probably going to be Brisbane, the Dogs, and
Bulldogs,
Geelong.
Brisbane. Yeah, exactly. The real. I think Geelong like Geelong don't dominate the contest as much. You know what I mean? Like I think it's going to be those real gritty inside teams that give them the most problem.
Yeah, you're probably right there.
But yeah, as I said, they want the rest of their losses to be like under 100, like preferably 60 or 70 if they're going to have bad matches. They just can't, you know, give this least amount of effort. And it's like, okay, it happened. You know what I mean? Like you tell, like sometimes when things go against you and you're a young team, it's hard to patch it up. But this is what we're going to do in these situations. You know, re-galvanize, if that's a word, the troops.
That is a word, re-galvanize.
Yeah. And then, yeah. So, what was I saying? Oh, yeah. So just, yeah, again, intent and effort, you know, as I said, I don't think you're going to accuse, like the Eagles should have enjoyed the 2 weeks that they won back to back. Like, it's been a long time since they've won 2 games in a row. It's been a long time since they've won a game outside of Optus Stadium, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think the only wins that they had, like in the past couple of years, were all at home, off the top of my head.
Yeah. So, yeah, I said, you don't want to be like a miser to a young team. But yeah, as I said, it's just like getting them to refocus more. I think that's the thing. Because again, the worst thing that could happen is like another 100-point loss next week. I think that's when you can start getting concerning. And I would say at least a month they can't lose by 100 points. And then you can sort of wash this game away.
Yeah, I completely agree. All right, jumping over to the injury side of things, Malcolm Roses Jr. Was pulled out as a late change with a calf concern. And on the MRO side of things, Cooper Duff-Tytler was fined $2,000 for striking Justin McInerney. Jake Waterman was fined $1,500 for striking Callum Mills. And Angus Sheldrick was suspended for 1 match for striking Ruben Ginbey. So a lot of fists being thrown this week.
Yeah, that's right. Because the Angus Sheldrick one was actually technically a marking contest, but it was so late that you sort of had to give it. It was a pretty dumb free to give away. I think it was very early in the game too. Almost gave the Eagles a chance for an early lead or something. I'm only saying that because I remember it, so it had to be early. I turned the TV off after quarter time.
No, that's very fair. All right, let's jump over now to the MCG for our first Sunday game. And with what an absolute game this was. No one was expecting the Suns to lose here, but with a 20-point margin, the Demons did win out in that final quarter. 16-13, 109 to 14-5, 89.
Yeah, well, as I said, like I did see avenues for Melbourne to run with them, and you know, I said I wouldn't have said it was out of the question, but you know, as I said, just to do it so convincingly, you know, Melbourne's racked up a few scores, but like against, I guess, arguably weaker defensive opponents, but you know, 16-13, 109 to 14-5, 89. I forgot if he said the score or not.
I did.
But you know what I mean? Like, that was a pretty nice, mature victory. They sort of failed the Suns in the part of the game which they like to control, which is the center circle. Obviously, the Suns have a few players missing. Rao sort of looked very tentative going back into the contest, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
He just didn't quite look at his best. But I want to say, like, I'll say this is Call of the Week, Stephen King. Putting Tholstrup as a sort of a defender as he was, because he was on Took Miller, was still playing forward. He wasn't quite brought into the centre bounce until a bit later into the contest. And it just dried up their bowl link up so much. Like the Suns, when they got it inside 50, they're also having advantage.
Mm-hmm.
But Melbourne just denied consistent entries. They were very solid on the outside, and their inside just controlled territory. And, you know, as I said, I will say the Suns, because, like, obviously this wasn't a blowout or anything. Like, it wasn't even a bad game by the Suns. They did lift by improving their outside games. Like, I do actually respect that the Suns were like, okay, we're clearly not going to win this in the middle of the ground. Witts was just having I know he's up against Max Gawn, one of the best ruckman of the competition. But, you know what I mean? He just had a shocker.
Yeah.
It happens.
He really did.
And yeah, they could get nothing going in the middle. But they also getting really lifted. The Ulans were absolutely fantastic. Bodie's more in defense, but I try to shout out to him. Zeke, absolutely brilliant. Lockie Weller, really, really good. There was another one too. He played a really good game. I'm not sure why I mentioned them. Lockie Weller, did I say that? Lockie Goldman. Sorry, that's who I'm thinking of.
Yeah, he's
who I'll mention a bit later. I mentioned him specifically.
Yeah, because he was he's a debutant, right? Maybe not.
Yeah. I'll talk about his game in a bit. I'll get to that. But yeah, he was good. But yeah, as I said, so like that was like still good for them. And you know, Reed Walters absolutely lifted after King got clamped after his hot start. Like, you know, I do think that there was like a strong section of the Suns trying to lift due to the absence of their midfield and arguably their defense a bit too. Like I won't say that they were sprung, but I do definitely think that because of the weakness in their midfield, they had trouble adjusting through just like not having a strong defensive stoppage, presence that their midfielders normally provide.
Yeah.
Which, as I said, like was so clear when you saw Cozzy Pickett near the ball. The Picketts might be the hottest thing in Melbourne. After like risking losing their identity, you know, their core midfielder's gone. You don't really know where Melbourne's at. Again, last year I was like, well, you know, if Cozzy was in a half decent team, he would be all Australian. He's like he kept Melbourne close in most of the games. You know, him and Max Gawn. You know, it was like him, Max Gawn, and just like a chasm between like Melbourne players most likely getting doing stuff that will get them closer to a win. And then, you know what? The thing that they've done is, you know, bringing in Steele, putting Sparrow in the midfield, growing his game, is that their defensive efforts mean that Cozzy can just act as an offensive space winner, where you would pick him almost over anyone in the league at the moment, especially if you're like going towards young players.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like a prime net 5, you know, where you don't expect Cozzy to run two ways, because he just gets so much offensive power, burst, speed, and he can just change the game.
He is insane of a player. Like, he is such a difference maker. He's like, you say he's like a Nat 5. He's also like a Dusty in a way that he can just change the flow of a game on a dime, and he can just completely switch up, just the complete flow. He's got that much of an impact in his midfield team, that he's so important to their structure. And I really like the fact as well that bringing in Jack Steele and just trusting him to kind of bring back the form that he used to have, where he was one of St Kilda's best tacklers and best pressure players for this midfield, and kind of fill in that position that Petrarca kind of had. And it's really working out for them so far.
I think it's like they've split the Petrarca role with, like, again, allowing Cozzy to be that offensive beast. And as you said, like, with the Dustin Martin, obviously he doesn't have the body. But I think what you're talking about is he's got their forward line better.
Yeah, he's got
exactly.
He's very much a player who knows how to read the game so well. He's got that tactical mindset, but has the physicality of like just pure skill, essentially. He's got the best of both worlds in some ways. Yeah.
But as I said, like, that offensive side is very much Petrarca, and that defensive side is like, now they've just sort of split that between Steele and Sparrow.
And especially with Viney still being out as well. Like, he was primarily a lot of their pure pressure player. But with Steele currently
interesting whether he comes back in.
I think he will come back in.
It's hard to see the balance.
But I think he would be played more as maybe a rotational pressure player. Like, he'd come in bursts rather than
I think you got to rotate Sparrow, because Sparrow can still go up forward. Like, it would just be a bit of a waste to see like the good work from Sparrow sort of get taken back. You know,
I agree.
Just because making room for Viney, I think they're going to have to incorporate him back in. I think it will take a few weeks of figuring that out. But like, because right now they look really balanced. Melcher and Myercheck, they've maybe been a bit iffy, but like you can still tell, like they're still helping out Van Rooyen and their like decent rotation of half forwards,
And
just by providing more support. Because we saw last year Melbourne had a lot of turnover chains that looked threatening until they got it up to their forward line.
yeah, that's right.
And although, yes, and Myercheck, his shooting's been weirdly off this year. Melksham just came back. But at least it's causing more retention in their forward line. At least it's scoring more scoring shots to happen. And now, again, like, you say the Demons before, they haven't really scored much against good teams. 109 against the Suns, who last year were pretty solid defensively.
Yeah, I genuinely think that the way, like the changes that Melbourne have made, one, to their game plan, it's only been very slight changes to their game plan because they still have a lot of the same core. And obviously brought in the different personnel because they lost Petrarca and Oliver and a handful of others. Has just really freed them up in terms of like, and opened up how they structure, like, and how they play. Like they've become a team that, whilst we're kind of always an inside team, their speed in their inside is so much different to how it was last year.
Yeah.
And a lot of that does come down to Cozzy. But the fact that like Jake Melksham, he's almost 35. And the fact that he's still doing some really solid leading patterns, the fact that he's able to convert, like it's almost as if he's kind of wound back the clock 10 years. He's pulling a Jack Gunston.
I wouldn't quite go that far, but yes, it's a nice little return for Melksham. He's always been a bit
he had a really solid second
underrated,
half
but
last
like
year as well.
He's more important for structure, I would say, than teams realise, because he's a forward, but he also likes good wide leading patterns.
Yeah, and especially when Melbourne is still trying to figure out like who their leading tall forwards are going to be when Melksham retires. Myercheck does only have a couple years left in his career. Like Van Rooyen is still quite young.
Easing Van Rooyen. Like you can't really see anyone else that they've put as much time in. They've obviously rotated a few forwards who I can't even remember. Obviously, they tried Disco Turner, realized he was a defender in
He's very much a defender, that's for sure.
Yeah. He's been much better there. But, as I said, Harrison Petty still walks up forward. So they do need to draft another one. But like,
draft
again, it seems sustainable.
Or even have a look at your trade options, because like Jed Walters is on the table at the end of the year. I don't know if the Suns are going to re-sign him, so that there's an option there. There's a couple of other forwards from other clubs that I think are back on the market. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know there's definitely a few that I think would fit Melbourne really well. There's definitely a few that would fit Richmond very well, that's for sure. But like there's definitely some options that you don't have to try and draft for. Because again, like tall forwards, they take, again, just like rucks, they take a few years to probably develop. Because you gotta, you gotta get the body, you gotta get the tank, you gotta get, you gotta better the skill set. There's a ton of things that go into that sort of factor. But there's definitely, Melbourne are definitely on a really good path right now.
Yeah, I think just by the end of this year, you're like, I want to trust Van Rooyen to where, again, we can just do that sort of whatever they choose to do. And be like, okay, we at least have like a half decent forward that we can work around at the very least.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess talking about the Suns, so there's not too much to talk about. Again, I will say defensively, and I will just point this out, is that I think the weakness of that stoppage game did expose the defense. I want to say it was, as 8-6 Melbourne scored from stoppage, which was like 14 scoring shots. Not the worst in existence, but a lot more than Gold Coast normally give up. And, I said, I think clearances were actually technically, 39-28. So, as I said, pretty substantial clearance difference. But I think the thing is it's where Gold Coast probably need that next evolution in defense in some contests. Because, again, I don't think there's any alarm bells from this game. I'll definitely say that. But, it's like Mac Andrews was solid enough game. Mac Andrews, like his built as an intercept defender.
He is.
There's no doubt about that. But we saw a couple of times, like in the centre bounce stoppage, is that whether it's good confidence or bad confidence, he will give like oppositions up to 2 meters space.
Mm-hmm.
Like even in like a bowl up contest where things are, Like, there's no reason not to be on your man. So, I'm not going to have a go in for that because obviously that's a team structure thing.
Yeah.
Like, Mac Andrews obviously has permission to be like, okay, you can decide how much space you want to give on your direct opponent if you think you can influence the play. I think this match, when they did have this, he was very slow to adjust. Maybe getting a bit closer to his man because, again, like in a normal situation, he would have had enough space. I just think that he either needed to be told or, figure out himself. They just need to be a bit more closer to his man in certain situations. Because, as I said, they were just getting a bit too easy, those clearances to marks from these centre bounds. And it's not just Andrew, but like Andrew is how they're sort of set up from that. I think Charlie Ballard got beaten a fair bit as well. Like, he didn't have his best game. Obviously, a defender coming back. St. Collins even. Like, I know
Yeah,
the
I think
Suns just
Collins
didn't
was
have
a
that
little
much
bit quiet in
intercept.
that second half,
It was
especially.
He was just like, sort of existed. He was, again, on Van Rooyen, who was technically quiet, but, like Van Rooyen was getting involved and Sam Collins was just like, just taking a few clean intercepts. He wasn't going to other contests, which again isn't always his job, but they found ways to make the Gold Coast Suns backline less threatening. So despite like the increase in outside movement, as I said, it wasn't from intercepts. They were a bit down from what they normally were. So that's all I really want to say. And Lockie Goldman. Fantastic on his. I said I think it was debut.
I'm pretty sure it was his
either
debut.
that or his second game. He was just so versatile. He played a bit on the wing, sometimes in defensive efforts, sometimes in forward efforts. Linked up pretty well, scored a goal of his own. That's again, like, it's only one game, but a very interesting player and one that would be very handy. As we said, we've seen like the Gold Coast struggle to find tall outside targets. Like, that could be a sort of player that just elevates their game. To the next
he
level
kind of sits in the right sort of echelon of height that would fit that kind of role.
Yeah.
I think he just needs a little bit more time. Again, he's very young. Again, I think he was drafted this year, maybe last year. So he definitely just needs that little bit more time. And then but I definitely think he's deserved to play at least next week, in Gather Round.
Oh,
I think he's definitely proved that he has what it takes to play at AFL level. It's just about getting that experience further into him, develop him a little bit more and gel with the team. And who knows, he could end up being a very lethal player along that wing.
Yeah, as I said, I just really like the look of him. Again, only one game, but honestly, he's every chance to win the Rising Star this week.
Absolutely.
Just by the way he played.
Yeah, he played fantastically. All right, let's jump over now to a Sunday night clash. A lot of people were expecting a lot more out of this game, especially score-wise. But with the loss of a couple of players very early on for the Dogs, it did change the flow of the game a little bit.
Yeah.
So with a 34-point margin, Bulldogs hosting the Bombers, of course. Dogs win out 14-15-99 to 9-11-65. I was making a joke that this was going to be like a 200-plus game. I'm kind of glad I was wrong.
Like, this was watchable, which amazed me.
Not for the fact that I didn't want the Bombers to just be blown out of the water. I would not have been opposed to the Bulldogs getting just a huge percentage boost. But also, like, it shows that the Dogs can be quite vulnerable, which is really interesting.
A tiny bit. They did lose 3 players at halftime, but I'm a bit with you. Like, I wouldn't say it's like a huge concern. It's just, again, like the Bulldogs, like, we've talked about how good they are when they have control of the ball. The question is, and normally in finals when you face 4 good teams in a row, maybe 3 if you get a top seed, you don't always have control, and it's how you react and respond when it isn't going your way. But we will briefly talk about the first half because, again, it was pretty miserable. You say, like, oh, you wouldn't like, honestly, in the third quarter, I was actually a bit upset that the Dons were fighting back, just because it's like, I hate watching these sort of contests and it not being a blowout. You know, when it just goes to that like 70 or 80 point margin, and it just feels a bit unsatisfying.
Yeah,
Like, the
it
Dons
doesn't
don't
feel
need
as
any
like
more pain.
it
Yeah.
doesn't feel as gratuitous, you would say.
Yeah, but you're like, oh, if you're going to be a blowout, it may as well be a proper blowout, like the Swans game.
Yeah, exactly.
Or at
right.
least, like, you know, you can either be a sadist and watch it, or you feel like the right to turn it off and do something else.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway,
right. Like this was a
yes.
game that should have been a percentage boost, and instead it ended up just becoming a win, but not a win the Dogs should be proud of.
I would say proud, but like it's a Pyrrhic victory just because of some of the injuries and all that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, as it like Bontempelli absolutely dominating in the first half. Don's just not showing up in contests, and yeah, just allowing so much movement into score. It was pretty free flowing. And then, you know, the sort of switch, you know, it was subtle. It started with their mids. I think their midfield definitely lifted, especially Caldwell. He had a very mixed bag game in the first half. And then, you know, got a bit of pressure. His bogey started to lift. Zach Merritt and Archie Roberts, of all people, sort of got a bit more involved. Roberts isn't too bad, but he's not someone I would say is like gets off the chain too often. And, you know, it's not a flow-on effect. And their forward line, Edwards, Tom Edwards, I think it is, Archer May, Peter Wright even got involved, trying to get a lot more reward for their team. You know, which, you know, as I said, it was almost like them saying, thank you, like, we appreciate you lifting, now we're going to try and get as much score out of it. And all of a sudden, like, the Dons are scoring. Reed had an absolutely fantastic third quarter. And the Dogs goalless.
Kept them goalless. Yeah, it's so interesting because of the fact that like the Dogs weren't even. Yeah, they had these key injuries, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But like they weren't missing anything out of their forward line, really.
No, it was just like, you know, as I said, just a bit of loss of territory. Again, the Essendon intercept just improved. You know, they just sort of got caught on the hop, and, you know, you would understand if they scored less, but, you know, goalless, like, it wouldn't surprise me if this is, like, the only goalless quarter for the Bulldogs. Like, maybe, you know, if they play in, like, a rainy day, they might get it, but, like, in Marvel, I know the roof was open.
The roof was open because it was a dry night, which is always good to see.
Exactly. That's why. But anyway... in the fourth quarter, I don't think like the Dogs would have been too concerned. I think they sort of got their midfielders involved. Kennedy, Sanders, Bont teamed up, got some nice fourth quarter score. But again, the Dons win the last half by 20 and should be very proud of themselves because again, they were looking to be absolutely woeful. This is
the kind of performance that I think Brad Scott was after, because he had said last week after their abysmal performance that like he does not want to punish any of these players by, you know, making huge adjustments at the selection table. He wants to trust his players and just give them a couple of weeks to actually properly play together and see where they go. And I think this kind of outcome, granted it was against one of the best teams in the competition, is good.
Yeah. And I think, you know, it's one of those things where at least, like, again, and I think this is what you got to do as Prescott. Like, you can forgive errors, but you want to believe in your players' intent. And as we said, like, I do think the Bombers play at least with some intent. I do think that they often put intent, or not intent, but you know what I mean. Like, they sometimes put emphasis in the wrong areas. They sometimes get a bit rattled. They do these handball chains that go nowhere. Stuff like that. But, you know, we saw them go a bit more direct. We saw them actually taking a few more risky kicks as well, which I think was very good. Instead of just, like, shuffling it, they're like, okay, we're going to take the pressure off players getting tackled by kicking it long down the line, trusting some of our tolls. And, again, Archer May and I think it was Tom Edwards had a few nice marks in that third quarter. So... you know, you saw a bit of flow on. You know, Blackiston didn't have the best game, but he sort of, getting a bit involved in the ruck. Peter Wright, again, he was sort of asked to do a bit more, and he pretty much delivered, apart from his goal kicking. He probably should have gotten 2-1 at the very least, but,
Yeah, I definitely noticed
um,
that 2 meter Peter had a lot better of a game than what he's
yeah.
had, honestly, in like the past 8 months. Go like dating back to last
And
season.
yeah, and like some of Jacob Farrow's kicks from the halfback line were pretty fantastic. Like, a couple of intercepts, whatever, as a young kid. But he definitely opened up the play a bit. I'm actually going to check how many score involvements he ended up getting, because he probably would have been near, um, 5 score involvements. And yeah, pretty decent ball use. So, yeah. So again, there's a lot to sort of like about that. Tom Edwards actually led the score involvements with 7, kicking 2 of his own. So it
Yes.
was a nice little performance by the Perth lad. And yeah, as I said, they can, sort of hold their head high. As I said, for the Bulldogs, like, yeah, their ball winning in the third quarter was probably a dip your head. I think that's specifically why Beveridge looked like he was like in Brad Scott's shoe.
Oh yeah.
Like if you told an alien that, like, oh, this one of these coaches were like the abysmal Essendon Bombers and one of them was from the Western Bulldogs, like they would have thought Bevo was the the Essendon coach, because he looked grumpy in that third quarter. And honestly, like, it's a bit of accountability. It's respect as well. It's like, you know what? Like, Essendon are playing with intent. We can't just be letting them run over them. And again, I think in the fourth quarter they did adjust a bit. I'm not saying it's terrible from the Western Bulldogs. I think sometimes, with a bit of wind and a bit of, momentum, sometimes it's just hard to stop teams, even quote unquote bad teams.
Yeah.
But, as I said, at the end of the day, is a bit pyrrhic because, they're unfortunately seeming to lose a few players out of this match.
Yeah, so it has been confirmed that Tim English did an MCL injury. He will be out for at least 8 to 10 weeks. Artie Jones with a hamstring. He will be out for at least 3 to 4 weeks. And Ed Richards with a late change with knee soreness. I believe he's confirmed to be able to play in gather round. But we'll find out a definite on that late sometime either today as we're recording this or tomorrow when this is uploaded. But honestly, like, they brought in Lockie McNeil to cover him, and I thought he had a pretty solid game. Considering he's only kind of just a depth
He had
player.
moments. He dropped off a lot at the last half, but to be fair, he might not have had that much game time. He was pretty much a soft substitute.
Yeah, like
45% of the game.
he didn't. To be fair, he didn't even know who was going to be playing like a couple hours before the game even started.
Yeah, didn't he play a game before as well?
He might have played part in the VFL that day, possibly. So there's a fair chance he might have just, might have only been playing like a half game time or something like that. But otherwise, at that time, not a bad substitution.
Yeah, like, he was involved in a couple of decent plays early. So, I said it's nothing to it was just a couple of score involvements and a few possessions. As I said, hard ass to play in that situation, but decent. But what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, Artie Jones was be disappointing because he really looked like he came into his own. 3 goals, a lot of decent marks, some terrific grabs actually.
Yeah, they're going to miss him for the next few weeks.
Yeah,
but they're going to miss Tim English more, which is gonna be rough.
Yeah. The only other news too is, of course, the what was thought to be an injury but seems to be okay from Ben Reid. Thought that he might have had a bit of hamstring awareness, went off a bit late. Wasn't recorded as an official injury, but some Dons fans knew that it might not be some good news. And yeah, he I think he was given the all clear today by a tweet by whoever that I saw.
One of the AFL journals, which is good.
Yeah,
it's good. They definitely need some good news right now, the Bombers fans. So still good to see.
Yeah, and it's like Tom Reid, so good for for a player that hasn't always been able to hit the park. So yeah.
All right. So there has been nothing else updated in regards to the next game we're about to talk about. Probably won't be updated till about later today. But the traditional Easter Monday blockbuster. What a game this was. Honestly,
Oh,
probably
yeah.
the best game of the season so far. A 1 point margin between Hawthorn and Geelong with a miracle kick into the post by Jack Gunston. With 13-14-92 to 14-7-91. We have no notes written down on this, but holy mother of hell, what a game this was. What an absolute perfect way to end the Easter weekend.
Yeah, it was one of those ones where I think again I was only brief. Like I mainly watched the second quarter because I was at my aunt's house. I was being sociable, catching up with family. I did put the TV on and sort of just like half watched that until the last quarter where I actually sat down and got to watch the whole thing. Um, and yeah, as I said, like it looked I wouldn't say scrappy, but it definitely felt like arm wrestly that first half. Geelong were a bit inefficient from what I heard or people talking. Uh, and then, as I said, it was just sort of the best bits about Geelong game, starting to get a bit of play from the centre stoppages, starting to get some nice turnovers turning into goals. And, like the further it went on, the more you're starting to think, Geelong seem to have not raps on this game, but they look a bit more likely than Hawthorn.
Mm-hmm.
Hawthorn were just like having some nice moments, but not quite capitalizing on them. And then just, as I said, um, Geelong get ahead by 10 points, look solid. And then like their very nice Chol mark and goal, bringing them to even. Shannon Neal gets it, looks to win it for them pretty much. Mitch Lewis kicks a goal from centre bounce. And yeah, then the Gunston one. Just, it was one of those games where, like, at the Shannon Neal goal, because I talk about my family, because I was, like, my dad, he is terrible. Not so much in AFL, specifically for basketball, in, like, not knowing when teams are done.
Yep.
Or sorry, he always rules out teams too early. Like, it'll be the last quarter, a team's down by, like, 12 or 14, and it's like, oh, this game's finished. But like basketball, it's like high scoring enough to be, not that big a deal. Not ideal, but not great. So I always like to talk to him in terms of like percentages. And in this game, with the family, I was like, and my aunt was like, oh, is this game done? Or might have been my mum actually. And I was like, nah, I'd say like Geelong had an 80% chance of at least winning or drawing from that point. Because, like Hawthorn, they're not a good inside midfield team, or at least like not good at scoring.
Not right now, no. Like with
no,
with the fact that like Will Day's constantly still in and out of the side.
Yeah.
They've had a couple of players, partially from injury, partially just out of form, that haven't looked greatest. Like Newcomb was a little bit down in the first couple of games. Looks fantastic in this one. Massimo D'Ambrosio. Again, I had another couple of down games earlier in the season. Looked fantastic again in this one as well. Out on the wing, Connor McDonald looked fantastic. Josh Ward looked really good. There was definitely something about the rivalry against Geelong that kind of just elevated everyone's performances.
Yeah, but like what I was gonna say is like I can't confirm this, but I'm only looking at the stats because I haven't. Again, like I haven't like gone back and look. I had some other stuff to do this morning. But Hawthorn kicked 1-1 from centre bounce. And I can't confirm this because I think there might have been a stoppage before the behind. But I do know that goal came from that last centre bounce. So there's a chance that they could have scored their only centre bounce scores in those last two scoring chains to get them the win, which would have been amazing.
That is actually
like
it was really interesting.
Yeah. Again, I might be wrong on the behind, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, I almost felt like a bit of a choke from Geelong because, yeah, as I said, sometimes, as I said, you start to panic a tiny bit. What you think is doing like the responsible thing is playing it a bit too safe. And yeah, they just couldn't quite find a way to kill it. Like their deep defense was really good. They almost like stopped Hawthorn from scoring entirely. Like it took a couple of solid efforts to get that final behind through. But again, it was just, it was almost a bit too much. It was almost a bit too much defensive space and not enough, I wouldn't say lack intent to go forward, because obviously, probably by the time they were at the draw, they're probably, once they lost the initial clearance, they were like, okay, we just can't lose this.
Yeah.
But yeah, as I said, they just couldn't quite work it out. And, it's full credit to Hawthorn. I know I'm mainly talking about the last minutes. Again, I can't really say I can analyze this game. It looked like a lot of the outside players were doing fantastically. Obviously we know a lot about Geelong, but, as you said, like your McDonald's, your Ambrosios, Ginnivans, if you want to count him as an outside player. Impey, absolutely.
One player I definitely want to talk about a little bit more is the Wizard. He had a tag on him for most of this game. I think it might have been O'Sullivan who was tagging him. I can't remember who it was specifically.
Oisin Mullen.
Oisin Mullen, thank you. I knew it was like an O something. But like the fact that he was still able to kind of create this space between them and have an impact on the scoreboard is part of the reasons why this game was so back and forth and why it was so intense, because every player that can have those kind of X factor impacts were being well held by Geelong's system.
Yeah. No, I mean, I definitely felt it, because it felt like they're, because I said, like, what you're talking about, like, a lot of it was the outside. Like, some of that was Geelong making sure their Hawthorn's more dangerous areas were sort of minimized. Like, I don't think either team were like that defensively sound. Obviously, Hawks backline did some pretty decent jobs. I know their tolls, weirdly enough, had a good game, but they were surprisingly good at like ground level for how often it sort of went down there.
Brief little shout out to Mitch Edwards, who kind of took on most of the ruck duties alongside blitz halves. 18 hitouts, 6 clearances, 3 inside 50s, 10 contested possessions. Not too bad of a ruck game there for being so young.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, as I said, it was definitely one of those ones where it was a nice little cameo as well, especially with that late goal by Mark Blitzarves. You know what I mean? It's like they find weird ways to get like players involved. Even Reece Stanley, like I know he's not the best ruck ever, but he still found 1 or 2 moments in most matches. Obviously, that decreased during the years. He was probably his last year was pretty mediocre. He might not return to football, but as I said, it's nice that they're finding some new players as well to go into it. And yeah, Ollie Henry as well. Like obviously, I didn't really see much of his goals, but getting 3 off Sicily, and a pretty solid tall back line. You'll take that for a player that's always been on the cusp of being useful, I would say, Ollie Henry. Not quite as good as his brother in terms of like specific role.
I think both Ollie Henry and Ollie Dempsey both had really, really fantastic games in this game. Honestly, I can't really fault anyone during this game. Like it's one of those games that's just super intense. Stakes are always raised in a good rivalry game.
Yeah.
And I think everyone, for the most part, pretty much were on their A game. Like I can't really fault anyone too much for like a bad performance. Yeah. I don't think there really was one. Like everyone makes minor mistakes.
Are a bit quiet within the system. Yeah, exactly. And obviously, some matches just favour certain types of players. Like again, a lot of the outside players for Hawthorn were favoured, and as I said, a lot of the rebound players for Geelong seem to be on 100%. So yeah, again, it's not really too much bad.
One player I do also want to kind of shout out is Flynn Perez. He's played formerly for North Melbourne, was picked up by Hawthorn and had a fantastic game. 6 tackles, was able to have a smaller impact in 1%ers, 14 pressure acts. What am I looking at? 5 contested possessions, 13 touches. overall, like he wasn't a player that had a huge amount of impact, but he was
Mm.
in the right places at the right times and was able to um influence certain moments when it came to contests and one-on-one defenses, which was
Yeah, exactly.
I'm kind of really struggling to kind of word what I want to say when it comes to this, but like he just did
Mm.
he just played his role, to put it simply. That's kind of the best way to kind of
Yeah, it
describe it.
just I would say it's probably some more depth in the rebound because, as I said, like it was clearly like the play was going through Charm and Impey.
Oh yeah, no,
Like that, he was a
Impy,
player that just set up a lot of play.
I still cannot believe he has the impact that he has at his age. Like he is doing so much and he's having such a good
Yeah,
impact,
and
like such a
yeah,
fantastic
it's one of
game.
those things where I think we forgot how settled he became in that halfback role when Hawthorn were just like fairly mediocre. And now that they're coming good, it's like, him and Amon, like they've still got a lot to give. It's good to see, like as I said, I do miss them at Port. Jeez. You take for granted how good their bowl use in the back half, like compared
You
to
really do.
the turnovers that Port commit in their back
And the
half.
fact that they
It's like,
both
man,
went to Hawthorn at
can we
very
get them
similar
back?
times too, you could really use both of them right now.
Oh yeah. Obviously, like too much time has passed. Like at the time, like yeah, we had enough back there, but like we don't anymore. I want him back. Come back. But yeah, I'm glad they're doing well at Hawthorn. And again, fantastic game. And Geelong, as I said, one of those teams that's like, yeah, they're doing well, but like it's not reflected on the ladder at all.
No,
Two and
no, it
two.
really isn't.
Yeah, as I said, only one stinker of a game. But as I said, everything else has been fine. But yeah, as I said, I still expect them to be pushing the top four. But like, yeah, giving wins to Hawthorn and Gold Coast make that a lot harder.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's your competition, and they've uh,
So
come a bit short both
the
times.
interesting thing with this game is I originally had Geelong tipped, and then at the very,
Mm.
very last minute, like about maybe a minute before the game actually started, I switched my tip to Hawthorn, and I'm so glad
Yeah.
I did. Because it meant that
Yeah, but like in the alternative timeline where Geelong stopped that like set of bounds, then you're just an idiot. You're like, oh, how could I change
well,
my
no,
tip?
because at
You
the
know what I mean?
no, because at the time, like it was a draw, so it didn't matter at all, really.
No, I'm even talking about the
Oh, you
first
mean like the
goal.
like the goal? Oh, yeah. Then in that
Yeah, like
case,
from
maybe so.
yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. It's a fine line. Like, no, I'm not saying that you should feel like, of course, take the win. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to like dampen your parade or anything, but like, it just shows like, you know, how much unpredictability like how hard it is to like quantify football because there's just so many variables. You can get like really good hard performing teams not getting their
In
reward, and then as I said,
games like this
you can get
are won in
mm,
moments, and that's really
yeah,
really hard. One, to predict before a game, and to kind of explain to someone who isn't as knowledgeable in the sport, because there's
yeah,
because there's so many different factors to our sport that makes it so different to
yeah.
others.
And I think that was like one of the. I don't want to make like every life thing like a beautiful whatever moment, but like it was a good thing like sitting with the family. Most of which are like good football followers. But yeah, some of the ones that weren't interested in football, so I sat down to watch a game, and it was like, they were like, when there's like moments where like it's very ubiquitous. Like obviously, I have an understanding of like how freakish it is for Hawthorn just to have two centre bounce scores in a row.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and obviously, even just like from face value, like, Hawthorn getting it when Geelong seemed to have it, had it, in just like those moments where, it's just like as a collective, you can appreciate it on the same level just from how good those moments were. It's really sort of nice. Like, as I said, you don't need to listen to the Coast to Coast podcast every week to know that Hawthorn and Geelong finish was like a cracker.
This will
But
go
you know
down
what I
in the
mean?
history
Like,
books as one of the all time classics, and it's by
yeah, and
far and
it's
away
really
the
good
best
because
game of the season so far.
they've had good games like in recent history, but like they haven't had an all-time classic like this for a little while.
Yeah,
At least since Hawthorn's been good.
I think the probably the last one would have had to go back to like Hawthorn's three-peat run is when like the games would have been
No, it
those
wasn't
sort of
that. Like
classics.
there was one where Hawthorn had a pretty decent upset on Easter when they were mid, and then they just took over Geelong. I remember that.
I actually no, that one
Um,
was was that a couple of years ago, maybe? Or was that like
I
late
would say
late
3 or 4.
2010s?
Like this was when like Hawthorn were like smack on average
Okay,
to
yeah, so like
bad.
in the middle of their rebuild, essentially. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, so it'd be like early 2020s or like 2018, 2019 kind of area, I think. In
Yeah, I got a
that sort
feeling
of
it
game.
was 2021.
I can't remember how far back it was, but I do remember the
Mm,
game. But yeah, no, like
yeah.
this, what a great way to end the weekend, honestly. Like
Oh,
as
actually,
a neutral, what
I'm
a
looking at it.
fantastic game.
I found an article, 11 best Cats Hawk game, round 5, 2022.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Hawthorn 14-8-92 to Geelong 11-14-80.
Huh.
It was first year of Sam Mitchell.
Ah, okay. There you go.
Start of Jai Newcomb playing his 12th game.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Very interesting.
that was a good one.
All right. Let's move over now to the ladder. Now that every team has actually played the same amount of games, we can finally start to have a better understanding of where everyone currently sits in the competition this early on. So to start, our top six is the Western Bulldogs, the only undefeated team in the competition. That could change going into Gather Round this week. We'll talk about that. And the Sydney Swans, the Gold Coast Suns, and Fremantle round out the top four. North Melbourne sitting in fifth. That probably won't last very long, so enjoy it whilst you can. And then Hawthorn sitting in sixth. Rounding out the top 10 is Melbourne, Port Adelaide, the Brisbane Lions, and Collingwood. And then rounding out the rest of the ladder is Geelong, West Coast Eagles, both sitting on 8 points, of course. The Adelaide Crows, St Kilda, Carlton, and GWS, all with one win under their belts. And then to round it off, it's Essendon and Richmond sitting at the bottom. What a very
Yeah.
interesting ladder.
Well, the good thing is, like, not necessarily for you, because, like, the sad zone is pretty much two, arguably three teams this year, which is Carlton, Essendon, and Richmond.
Yes.
Obviously, West Coast will probably join them at some stage. But,
And I
like,
imagine
exactly...
North will probably definitely drop further down from where they are now. But I generally don't think they'll end up in the bottom four.
North, no, I don't think so. But yeah. I bet Port might go down, let's be honest. Like, they haven't been that good. They've got some question marks. But you know what I mean? It's like, you know, we've got some good teams like in that bottom half that will get going. And we've got some teams that are like, well, we shouldn't be good. But, you know, we're in the top 8. We might as well try and stay there. Like I'm talking about Melbourne, North Melbourne, probably not Fremantle, but like they've got a bit of element about them. Like in the fact that they're top 4 more so.
That's more their top 4 factor. The Freo still have that like tinge of like unpredictability, which is what kind of gives us not as much hope that they'll stay top 4. Like you imagine a team like Hawthorn, like Brisbane, like Geelong will climb back up and take those positions. But at the moment, like definitely, you know, take as much of it in as you can.
And like, you know, the Swans could go on a bad run, the Suns can go on a bad run. There's no reason why someone else can't drop out instead of Fremantle. So,
yeah, exactly right.
Again, it's it's good. Like, you know, there's some clear, not tiers, I would say, but like, you know, like soft rankings, but it's a lot more flexible than I thought it might be at the start of the season.
Yeah, I definitely think once we get closer to the mid-season, the Sir Doug Nicholls rounds kind of areas, we'll definitely have a better idea as to where teams really do sit against each other. But definitely right now,
like I still don't technically know. Like there's still technically a chance St Kilda might be okay.
Yeah,
and we'll talk about that.
We only have a small sample size on them at the moment. And that's purely because they, you know, it takes time for new players to kind of gel, especially when they're key players that they've brought in. So that could be a whole other thing. But let's preview Gather Round. So the only teams that this will majorly affect will be Adelaide and Port Adelaide, purely for the fact that it's it's all in South Australia. But a lot of this is neutral. Most of these games are neutral ground. So there's not really a big kind of like location factor. It's mostly just kind of pure head to heads. So we'll start with the first one, Thursday night clash between the Crows and Carlton. To open up gather round. No Jacob Wiedering. Carlton possibly would know Will Hayward as well.
Yeah,
they're not
maybe not getting Harry Dean back either.
They won't have Harry Dean back this week. I don't think they're missing anyone else major via injury. So should this be the game that the Crows finally start to get their season on track?
I mean, it should be. Like, again, I would hate to be like Carlton's defense this week because, again, without your leader against Phil Thorpe, who's looking to rise up, and whatever, like, their forwards have been a bit shuffling this year. They haven't quite gotten all three on the park. Always seems like one's missing. But if they get all three together, yeah, as I said, it might look a bit bad. Again, though, like, Adelaide aren't the strongest inside midfield team, which, again, I'm not saying like it's going to be another Carlton get out of the guns early and then fall away. I think Adelaide can just like purely blow them out. But like there is an avenue of like, oh, Carlton can, at least have a bit of their game be reasonable to expect to be firing at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, yeah, as I said, it's not really much to say after that because again, like Adelaide's defense is pretty good. They're pretty used to the ball going down there. They'll be fine only having to defend Mackay. And yeah, like you would expect Adelaide just to get a bit more rebound, get a bit more drive. But yeah, as I said, it's I wouldn't say it's dire for Carlton, but yeah, as I said, I wouldn't tip a small margin just because like they've got no defenders to cover.
Yeah,
Adelaide's forward line.
I definitely go like a minimum of 30 plus. But
yeah, probably.
Like it could be higher. Honestly, it should be higher purely for the fact that we know
it should be.
Adelaide are a much better team. But there's a lot of variables right now for both kind of at the moment. I feel like Adelaide are under like a little bit of an unconfident. Like they're not confident in themselves kind of cloud just because of all these close losses. But I feel like they'll bounce back pretty quickly.
Yeah, but they've been so efficient going inside 50 and like Carlton haven't really gotten that much territory. So I do think Adelaide will get an easier time in transition playing Carlton and I do think they'll ramp up into a double-fold improvement of attack. Yeah. Even though I think the rest is just like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's just like standard
I agree.
matchup.
All right, let's jump over now to our Friday clash. Collingwood and Fremantle also at Adelaide Oval.
Yeah, well, Collingwood, it's very hard to see them being too optimistic about them. Obviously had a fantastic game against Freo last year. Freo just got the wood over them. But yeah, there's a lot of systems firing at Fremantle. Their midfield and their forward line especially, and that's where I wouldn't say Collingwood are doing bad in defence, but you know what I mean? Like, again, 3 tolls in reasonable enough form. And you have injured backline. You don't know if you're getting Darcy Moore back. It's a bit of a tough ask, I would say. The outside though.
Yeah, go on.
I was gonna say the outside is like, still vulnerable enough where, Collingwood like to set up their game. I wouldn't say Freo's the best team at defending or running on the outside, so there's a small avenue for them.
There's definitely options. But whether it's like they're able to capitalize is like the bigger question. My question is that do Freo play into the storyline and bring over Mason Cox?
I don't know.
I think that'd be pretty interesting. Not that I think it's needed.
I don't think
because again, you've got Luke Jackson, you've got Sean Darcy, you've got your 3 key talls up forward. Like, you don't need to bring him in unless someone, I guess, in your defense is injured. And even then, you have defensive stocks you can float in for depth. Like,
like they could bring back Oscar McDonald or whatever.
Yeah, like there's no real need to bring Mason Cox over. Again, he is purely a depth option in this system.
Yeah.
But I think for the storyline, it'd be pretty funny.
Yeah, and I guess like if Fremantle really wanted to expose the toll, or like give Sean Darcy a break, I don't know, but like it would be fun. I don't think Longmire's like the sort of one to do it for the memes though.
No,
I
no,
think
probably not
we'll just
really.
see a normal. Again, I think we've said before, like if we were going to see Mason Cox at some point, be brought in without an injury to explain his entry, we would have seen it by now. There would have been more sensible times to do it. But yeah, I would very much doubt it, but we all secretly want to see it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like especially if like Lockie Schultz is also playing, then there's that renewed kind of storyline rivalry,
Yeah.
which is also funny. But yeah, no, I think the Mason Cox one would be a big one. Um, Jumping over to our Saturday games now, we've got North Melbourne hosting the Brisbane Lions down in the Barossa Valley, which I find really interesting because I feel like the reigning premiers should not be playing a
Mm.
game in the Barossa.
Yeah, you'd think so, especially, for the few Adelaide fans, sorry, South Australian residents that might be Brisbane fans. It's almost a bit disrespectful to them. Um, but as I said, it is what it is. Unfortunately, they tend to put the Adelaide Oval for the teams with the best travelling away fans, which we'll explain next match. But yeah, so North, I mean, it was a couple of weeks ago, like as mediocre as I think North are, you might have given them a sneaky chance, but the Lions, they're coming round. Like this is the match where I think it might fall apart at the seams for North, just from the way they sort of play, the way they look when they lose territory, which Brisbane are very good at getting.
Mm-hmm.
You'd imagine it would fall apart,
Do
by at least the scheme of 30 or 40 points. But they did draw last year, so like who
That
knows?
was also down in Tassie in horrible conditions. So I,
Yeah, I
um,
mean, if you're an North fan in the Barossa Valley, bring your I don't know if there's any like wind turbines there, but like try and spin them faster or something. Make a few rougher conditions on your own. Be your own weatherman.
do Brisbane get McCluggage back this week, or is he next week?
So, I thought his was only a
Because I know
1 weeker
I
for
think they
concussion.
don't have Harris Andrews back this week. I think that's next week. I can't remember how long it's
Oh,
been.
Harris is back this week.
If he's back this
Okay.
week, that makes that makes a
No,
huge
Harris is
difference.
back. That's round 5.
Okay.
And Hugh McCluggage was a test for the week before, so I'm imagining that they didn't play him to get him ready
So
for
they
this
both
important
should
match
be
against.
back this week.
Yeah, it should be.
Yeah, that definitely changes things for North in a dramatic way because those two are so good.
Oh yeah, with them starting to click. Yeah, as I said, I'd have very little faith for North, but like I mean,
As if North are able to make it competitive, then
yeah,
I think that's a good
it'd
tick,
be nice
especially
to
against
see.
the reigning premiers.
Yeah, and again, it's about converting as much as they can when they get in their forward line and trying not to make the difference a bit too drastic. Again, like even if I thought North's rebuild was going better, I wouldn't expect them to be a team like the Lions. Again, I say that even though they did last year, but like on their best, like the Lions just, I wouldn't say counter team, but as I said, they just do what North do at a much better rate.
Yeah,
So
pretty much.
yeah.
All right, let's jump over now to the next game in this Saturday blockbuster session with the Bombers hosting Melbourne at Adelaide Oval.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be a pretty safe Melbourne bet, but with how Essendon kind of fought against the Dogs and like how much better they kind of looked when they actually again played with intent, as we kind of talked about
Yeah.
when we broke that down. I think they could actually make this game a lot more interesting. However, I definitely still think the Demons will win out kind of overall because I think they're just at the crux of it a better team right now.
Well, the other thing is Max Gawn is playing as one of the best ruckmen in the competition, and
That's true.
as I said, Lockie Blackiston, he does try, but he is very much under a serious ruck. So that should just be a clear advantage. Melbourne midfield's firing, so it's Essendon's midfield need to be like, okay, it's an uphill battle, but we've seen like in an uphill battle where some of our intent and effort can turn into reward. So
Mhm.
they got to go into this sort of thinking that, again, their forward line, Melbourne hasn't exactly been a defensive powerhouse this year. So, they might want to see if they can convert a few more entries into score. But as you said, like Melbourne, just in terms of territory and skill use and overall schematics, are just like a fair bit ahead. Like Melbourne might be a mediocre team when all's said and done during the year, but it seems like they've got like a lot more consistency, a few more older players to level them out, and they should win a team against a team like the Dons.
Yeah, I completely
Should
agree.
just be expected.
And even like,
Yeah.
if Essendon are able to kind of quell Cozzy's influence, I think that will go a long way because he does do so much work bursting through that midfield and having
Yeah.
that offensive game style. But yeah, I just with what Melbourne's doing like around the ground and how they've been able to change up their forward line structure as well to make their score conversions actually impactful. Yeah, I just think they should win this outright, realistically.
Yeah. And as I said, like, it's all about how they can limit from stoppage. Because again, like the Bulldogs only got 7-7 from stoppage, which again, is still big enough. But in the schemes of like how good the Bulldogs can be from that midfield unit, is a pretty decent result. So again, Essendon need to remain defensively accountable, but we just expect Melbourne to roll them, steam arm them. I don't know what I'm saying.
Steamroll them.
Roll over them at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't going to say steamroll because that just seems too much, but like decently flatten.
Yeah, that's very fair.
Let's put it that way.
All right, let's jump over now to some back-to-back blockbusters. Starting at Norwood Oval, we've got the Sydney Swans taking on the Gold Coast Suns.
Oh, it should be an absolutely fantastic game. Again, you would normally say, oh, the Swans, they lost a bit on the outside, but against the Sun, it shouldn't matter. Signs that the Suns could actually be going from there. But the biggest question is, is it going to still take another week for their midfield to get sorted out? Obviously they didn't quite look clean against Melbourne, but, still weren't awful. But up against Sydney, you know what I mean? Like if Melbourne are able to like beat you and score a bit, you would expect that Sydney would find like those avenues plus more, which is very dangerous. I do think just like from what I've seen, like Sydney should win, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was by at least, a few goals. But you can't rule out the Suns. Like again, Sydney, their defense isn't like overly fantastic. And the Suns forwards did a few good things. So, as I said, I do think this is just like not the right time for the Suns to face the Swans. I do think that still should be a fairly enjoyable game.
Oh, 100%.
Regardless.
If this game was a little bit later in the season, it would be probably just as good of a game as like the Hawthorn Geelong game just gone. Like it'd be like that that impactful, like that high energy. Like both teams would be on an even bigger A game. Like it would be an insane clash. In terms of like actual tipping, I genuinely don't know who to lean. I'd probably go Sydney just because like the kind of the faults that the Suns kind of had against Melbourne, I think Sydney can capitalize on. But for the most part, it is kind of a 50-50 game. And our next one as well is also very 50-50.
Because, like, I think the Suns have an avenue to patch up a few things that went wrong last week. But, again, it's just like that matchup areas of like what you can do on the park and what you're bringing to the team sheet. It's just like it's a cumulative disparity that's enough to make me confidently lean towards Sydney. Even though I don't think it's going to be like a huge, I would be surprised if this was a blowout, or even a comfortable win. But like, I do imagine like there's a few Sydney players that I think are just going to be the difference. And, I'm not that sort of operator that's like, oh, Heaney will have a great game and we'll win it for them. But like, I can see that being like the case of a player like of Heaney just being a bit too hard to control with what the Suns have got in the midfield at the moment.
Yeah, it's going to be a bit like that. Jumping over to the other big blockbuster Saturday game, Hawthorn
Mm.
and the Western Bulldogs at Adelaide Oval. Do the Dogs
Yeah.
get it done without Tim English?
I don't think Tim English is as big of the problem. Hawks have like found a bit with Ned Reeves performing pretty well over the last few weeks. Starting to play a bit more in tandem with Meek. We actually had a Meek Monday, which was very fun this week. I forgot to mention that. But yeah, I'd say the outside game's a bit more concerned, with the way that the Dons were not so much hold up with like a massive amount of possessions, but like again, part of the Dons wants to hold up the ball. We see the Western Bulldogs when they don't have the ball sometimes find it a bit hard, and that's sort of where the Hawks play. But most times they've been tested this year, they've been able to come out in front of it, and they've definitely got more scoring potential than the Hawks do overall. So it's going to be the Hawks' defense. If the tolls can be quelled, Hawthorn should be able to limit the Bulldogs' offense enough to be able to win. But, that's not always the easiest task. Like, they're undefeated for a reason.
Yeah, exactly right.
And I think this is pure 50-50. Maybe, look at the ins and outs. But, I don't know. Maybe going towards Hawthorn? I don't know.
My only gripe is it would be like, yeah, it'd mostly just be like a ruck thing because I don't entirely know who English's cover is. Like,
I can look that up for you.
Do they have? I know that
Not
Darcy and Norton do a lot of the rotational work and when it comes to like the forward line ones.
There's no journeyman to come in. I know that.
Yeah, I know that much as well. Like, they don't have anyone who's kind of like just been brought in from another club just to fill that kind of role. So that's kind of like my biggest thing. Like, I think the Dogs' backline has gotten a lot better so far this season, and I think it'll match up well against the Hawks' forward line, who, whilst can be unpredictable and do play, not very conventionally, they play very unconventionally. I think the Dogs are able to match that kind of energy. So I think a lot of this will end up just being like that midfield battle. But I think the ruck work, especially if both Reeves and Meek end up going in against this, could end up being like the biggest factor going into the clash.
To answer your question, they're listed rucks are Lachlan Smith, who's 20 years old and 203 centimeters, and Louis Emmett, which they picked up this year in the second round, who is 19 years old and 200 centimeters.
Okay, so neither of them have played
obviously, yeah, none of them have played the game, and both of them are obviously raw as anything. Rory Lobb, remember?
Yes, I know Lobb is tall enough to do the ruck.
He has played ruck, pure ruck. Like, he played ruck for GWS initially as well. Like, he was, I think he was a ruckman before he was a forward.
Man, he really has played every role.
Yeah. So, yeah, again, you would probably expect duties to be split up. It might be three-way.
I would say
they have to bring in one of the kids, don't they?
I don't think they do.
It'd be hard not to.
I think the only way they do it is rotationally. You start Norton in the ruck or Darcy in the ruck.
I wouldn't do Norton. That's too much of a risk.
You probably start Darcy in the ruck then, and then rotate either those, and then like if need be, you just get Darcy to do the forward rucking as well, or you'd rotate it with Norton, and then just get Lobb to do the defensive rucks, and then you just have to figure out who comes in when they're on the bench. Like, maybe you just...
I still wouldn't even... I would, like...
Because I feel like in a game like this, it could be too much of a risk to bring someone so young.
Yeah.
I mean, you could just purely to have a body in there.
Put your best goal kicker.
Oh yeah, that too. Like, it's a hard ask.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is I think they're going to split it because, again, I can't see them putting... I'd say the opposite. I'd say Sam Darcy's only got 4 contests, and then they're going to figure out, as I said, put Smith on and then maybe get Lob to take, maybe 20% of the ruck,
Yeah,
maybe
maybe
30% to
maybe you
Smith.
just bring one of the kids in and just
Yeah.
give them minimal game time and just purely bring them in just purely for ruck
And
contests.
again, it's not like we watch the VFL. Like, I have no idea
No,
if
yeah,
he's
that's
going
exactly
anywhere
right.
in
Like
that. So,
I haven't seen much of what the Dogs do in the VFL. Um,
mm,
but that could be the only way they do it, and they just they only bring him in for
yeah.
like maybe 20-25% game time and just rotate the ruck role.
Oh, maybe there's like an undersized ruck they can play. It's like sort of a midfielder sort of one. Take that
But
avenue.
yeah,
It'd be
they might
interesting.
not be
I don't know
tall
if that's
enough,
good,
but they're able to
but
at least
yeah.
make the content. It might also be dependent on whether it's they come up against Reeves or they come up against Meek, as like who takes on their
No,
ruck
I think
duty
they'll
as
play
well.
both.
No,
Like, I
I
think
assume they'll
that's a
play both, but
fairly
I mean like who
set,
goes up
yeah.
against which ruck at what
Oh,
time.
like in the game,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
Like that could be also a big
Yeah.
factor.
Yeah.
So that's probably my only question mark in regards to this matchup. Otherwise, I think it's a pure 50-50.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. All
All
right.
right.
Shall we go on to probably a less 50-50?
Yes. Geelong are the West Coast Eagles at Norwood Oval, our first Sunday clash. Geelong should easily burn the Eagles away, like with no issues. I want to
Yeah.
hope that like the Eagles again can make this a competitive game. But just with the way Geelong plays, I don't think that'll be the case.
Yeah, the Eagles have historically struggled to stop Geelong from scoring, and there's no reason to think that wouldn't be the case. Like, the teams that they have beaten, I guess North's been like that one where it's like, oh, they haven't really been, like, they've been scoring pretty well, but, like, Port aren't exactly a forward powerhouse team. So, as I said, you would imagine Geelong would just get to like 120 points, and it'll be very hard to see the Eagles getting anywhere near that. But, like, again, it's about effort and intent. Like, if you're like, okay, yeah, Geelong's going to beat us in the inside 50 marks, but like we can at least make sure the ground level stuff swings towards more of our favor. We can at least make the outside contests a bit better, and try and limit the marking. I don't think you can fully, but as much as you can.
There's opportunities to quell Geelong's output, but I don't know if there's enough opportunities for the Eagles to get on top of them, like in scoring.
Oh no!
So yeah,
I wouldn't say there is.
It's definitely
like, it would be such an extreme upset.
Oh yeah, that would be one of the upsets of the season if it was to happen. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that one's pretty cut and dry. Jumping over down to the Barossa Valley where the Giants host Richmond, and I think this one might be a lot closer than people think.
Well, I mean, Richmond has actually come pretty close to the Giants in the last couple of games. Even won 3 years ago, but I think the Giants were sort of, starting to.
Giants
really
coming off a bye. Kieran Briggs
Yeah.
hasn't exactly been in great form recently. Like their forward line structure has been very 50-50 in its consistency.
Basically,
Their
if there's
defense
any
is
team that
kinda
mucks
shot.
around with the ball, if there's any team that mucks around with the ball worse than Richmond, it's GWS at the moment. They just, a lot of ball for not much result. But yeah, the territory is going to be hard to quell. Richmond just need to make sure that this scrap, they need to work out how to get some, points off turnovers, because scoring's been hard for them. But obviously score from turnover is one of the easier places to score. So if Richmond just like look for moments to counter attack and get it, they can definitely run close with. Again, I do think it's a chance for GWS to just get on the park again for another win. But like, it's still hard to believe that this team beat Hawthorn.
It's so weird to think about that they're the only team that give Hawthorn a loss, and yet they just they don't look that good at the moment.
No. So like I'll give it to GWS, but like again, this could be a concept. Yeah, the last 2 games are pretty much the same in that regard.
Yeah, I think the safe tip, if you're in the tipping game, Giants are 100% the safe tip here. But I definitely think there are avenues here to where Richmond can get their first win on the board. Like especially out of their opponents that they faced in the past couple of weeks and in the next couple of weeks, the Giants are probably the best one they're going to get for the moment.
Yeah, exactly. So Richmond, they need to be hunting. Otherwise, the season's looking a bit grim if they don't even get competitive.
Especially if this is a wet weather game. I got no idea what the forecast looks like, but if this becomes a wet weather game,
Yeah,
it definitely favors Richmond a lot more. But we shall see.
I might as well look up Adelaide weather.
I mean,
I'm gonna do that.
Go for it.
It's gonna be not warm.
That's
I
expected.
don't think it's gonna be very
it's
rainy.
South Australia in April.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think there's any forecast rain, at least in Adelaide until, except for Thursday maybe, and even then it won't be much.
It'll be interesting to see how that game ends out. Anyway, let's jump over now to our last Sunday clash and the last game of Gather Round, where Port Adelaide hosts St Kilda. How are you feeling?
I don't know. Port are like mediocre, but is it like is St Kilda just as mediocre
mediocre, or is it less than St Kilda mediocre?
Or is it like Carlton mediocre?
Yeah,
it's very hard to tell. Yeah, look, I do think that Saints are going to be a bit more lethal when they're getting their forward 50. Port tend to struggle a bit with some of the small forwards. So, there's got a few that can get off the chain. Again, it's going to be interesting to see how well their midfield stack up. Obviously, Port's midfield is probably sunk to the same levels of St Kilda over the last few years in terms of not that threateningness. So yeah, it's going to be. I think it's going to be one of those things where Port will probably get the territory, but St Kilda will probably be a bit more lethal and get a few more scoring shots. And I do think if you're a tipper, tip St Kilda, but I'll probably just tip Port again, I guess. Why not?
Yeah, I still don't really have that much confidence in St Kilda at all.
No.
If you're gonna have any sort of confidence in them this week, it'd probably be this game just to tip them. But
I mean, yeah,
genuinely, I don't know. I genuinely have no idea at all if I should or not.
Oh, and these games tend to be terrible.
Yeah,
I know last year was a nice St Kilda
Sunday
upset,
bracket
but
is honestly a garbage,
it's pretty
garbage Sunday.
Yeah, but yes, Saints and Port have historically been defined by a lot of behinds, a lot of mucking around with the ball. They just love to bring bad football to each other. Yeah, they're the couple that sort of deserve each other. And it'll be weird to see if both teams being terrible. It'll be funny if both teams are terrible and then they just put on a cracker. That would be a fun sort of irony, but I don't see that happening.
No, neither.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
Doesn't matter who wins this game. I don't know.
No, honestly, right now I don't think it does. Which is unfortunate because you want to have a really, really good end to Gather Round, but you kind of put up two teams. Well, Port Adelaide was always going to end Gather Round if the Crows were opening it.
Yeah, exactly.
That was always.
So I guess St Kilda's as good a team as any. They're theoretically around each other.
Yeah,
it's just Port might be a bit lower.
It could be a good game, or it could just be an absolute boring game.
More likely.
It's more likely that. But that does actually bring us to the end of episode 100. Thank you all so much again for coming onto this journey with us. For even if you're just only here to, take a look at what we think about your team, that's perfectly fine. If you watch the entire episodes, thank you so much. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, of course, and just making this fun and allowing us, not that we make anything from any of these. Again, there is no revenue made or anything like that at all. But it does give us more opportunity, we feel to be able to go to games together. We got to do one last year. If our time in Queensland together actually lined up a little bit better with the footy, we probably would have gone to a game together then. So hopefully, it does allow us to have those more opportunities. Granted, with me working nights and weekends, it does make that a little bit harder for me to try and get that time off. But otherwise, like we're really grateful that talking more about the footy feels like it gives us more opportunities to have go on a little bit of little adventures together a little bit more often.
Yeah, and it's just nice to touch base with a friend every week, it's like centralized about football, but like it's very easy in like communities to just talk about whatever the community is about. So it's nice to be like, oh, just actually talk a bit, make sure we're going all right. And hopefully anyone listening, hopefully there's a chance to do that with your friends, as I said, like in the grand scheme of things, I don't think the Coast to Coast podcast is going to go as history as like a recognized podcast.
No, probably not.
You know what I mean? It's mainly for the love of the game and for friends. But as I said, it doesn't mean that the time spent together talking about football and appreciating not just football but life isn't just as valuable.
Exactly
and I
right.
appreciate that.
So without further ado, we do have to end the episode here. There is no. I was considering maybe potentially bringing up an idea of a mini bonus episode where we have potentially like a conversation with someone who's a fan of the other code, being the NRL, and having that as like a special bonus episode. But due to time, I have not brought that idea up or gone along with it
Yeah.
just because
That would have been good for April Fools.
That would have been a pretty fun idea actually for April Fools. We should have been more on the ball with that. Oh well.
Yeah. Oh.
But so next week, episode 101 will be the Gather Round recap episode. So stay tuned for that. Do you have much on?
Back-to-back big episodes.
Yeah, I know. It's going to be really, really good. Do you have much on for the rest of the week?
Yeah, I'll be heading over house sitting.
Nice.
So I'll be in a different locale next week. Always like house sitting for my Rockingham. Same family where we went to Easter. So yeah, got a little doggo. He's got some quirks. He tries his best. That's all you can ask for in life.
Yeah.
And yeah, I like looking after him, and they like being able to go on holidays and not have to worry about a dog sitter.
That's very nice. For me, it's mostly just work. I'm so close to being at the end of my hot cross bun run. It's end of this week. They're no more. We don't make any more. I'm so looking forward to it. It's gonna be so nice. I'm so sick of seeing hot cross buns. Oh my god. So I'm looking forward to that. Otherwise, not much else is kind of going on. I've got a ton of stuff that I need to do here at the apartment. So I'm mostly just going to be focusing this week on doing that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So once again, thank you all so much. And we will see you all next week. Take care.